and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in compliance with NJSA 10:4, the Open Public Meetings Act, and in accord with DCA guidelines regarding the functioning of virtual meetings, this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jackson Township Board of Adjustment has been published and posted in all appropriate locations.
Thank you. Danielle, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Costanzo?
Here.
Ms. Fritsch? Mr. Hurley?
Here.
Ms. McElhenney?
Here.
Ms. Camello?
Here.
Ms. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Najarian?
Here.
Mr. Book?
Here. Thank you. Danielle, understand we have some resolutions for this evening?
Yes. Yeah, there's quite a few. Okay. First is Resolution 2021-11, Donato, Block 3801, Lot 17, 362 Tall Tree Court, granting a variance to construct a fence. Eligible are Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
Can I have a motion and a second to approve? So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Fritsch? Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-12, Hager, Block 7210, Lots 10, 31 Montana Drive, granting a variance to construct a fence. Eligible are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
I have a motion and a second to approve, please?
Move to approve.
Second. Roll call?
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-13, Strategic Equity Solutions LLC, Block 6504, lots 14 through 16, CLP Luigi Marcienti Memorial Drive, approving a 2-year time extension for a project that received preliminary and final site plan approval by Resolution 2017-30, dated May 17, 2017. Eligible are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
I have a motion and a second to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-14, Luxor Drive, 1426 LLC, Block 13401, lots 2.02, 4.01, 15, 16, 24, and 26, Green Valley Road, approving an interpretation that for density calculations on split lots, the location of the primary residence is determinative. Eligible are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
I have a motion and a second to approve, please?
Move to approve.
Second. Roll call?
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-15, Scamato, Block 9704, Lot 2, 3 Whispering Grove Boulevard, granting approval of variance to maintain a shed. Eligible are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Russell, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
I have a motion and a second to approve, please?
I'll make that motion.
Need a second? Thank you. Roll call, please?
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-16, Hassan, Block 5102, Lots 1, 17 Victoria Circle, granting approval of a variance to permit an in-ground swimming pool. Eligible are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Russell, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
Have a motion and a second to approve, please.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
And lastly, Resolution 2021-17, Madar, Block 18503, Lot 7, 810 Miller Avenue, granting approval of a variance to construct an addition. Eligible are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Russell, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
I have a motion and a second to approve, please.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
And that concludes the resolutions for this evening.
All right, thank you. Do we have any minutes for approval tonight, Danielle?
Yes, there are three sets, March 17th, April 7th, and April 21st.
The first two you may move on. Very last one on the 21st, having just received them. And I know I have not had the opportunity to review them in detail. They are quite lengthy. I'm going to table those to the next meeting, but you can run the first two, Danielle.
Okay, there are two different eligibilities for the March 17th and April 7th.
Very well.
You have to name them out, so. folks-
Oh, my apologies. Eligible for March 17th are Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello, Ms. Russell, Mr. Najarian, Mr. Book.
All right, so as to March 17th, can I have a motion and a second to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. And as to the April 2, who's eligible on April 2, Danielle?
For April 7th, it's Mr. Costanzo, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Russell, Mr. Najarian, and Mr. Book.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of 4/7?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. All right, thank you, Danielle. That's it, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I have some invoices here. I have an invoice for King Reporting for April 21, another invoice for King Reporting for May 19th, both in the amount of $250. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the invoice and to pay the bills?
You got a motion to pay all bills?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley, Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. Thank you. I'm moving along. Next item in the calendar is announcements. There's nothing written in under announcements, but I know there's been some calendar changes. So I think now would be an appropriate time to address those calendar changes. At least as to number 1 and number 10, I'm going to defer to Mr. Gertner. He's got the details. He'll bring you up to speed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public, item number 1 on the agenda, which is already marked in this fashion, applicant Paul Fornicola, 534 Whitesville Road, use variance 3347. That matter has asked to be carried to the June 2nd, 2021 meeting without the need of further notice. There has been a waiver of time through the end of June on that matter, and I would ask that the board assent to that adjournment request. In addition, application number 10, WSNP LLC, use variance 3316. First, given the length of the agenda, it would appear it would not have been reached in any event. But moreover, you will recall that the board was asked and tasked the applicant to discuss certain issues with the neighboring property. Mr. Pfeffer, who's here, so if I misspeak, he can certainly add something to this, has made a representation that those discussions are ongoing and asked for a short adjournment. We would ask also, therefore, that the matter be scheduled on the June 2nd, 2021 meeting, that it be scheduled as number 2 on that agenda for that evening, with Fornicola being number 3. Although Mr. Pfeffer didn't specifically say, I would presume, and I'll take his silence as assent, that he would waive time through June 30, 2000. He's shaking his head yes anyway, 21 meeting. So I would ask the board's approval of that as well. I think based on his representation, I can certainly indicate to the board that the applicant has taken the board's direction to the applicant seriously. Obviously, nothing's done yet, but we'll be in a better position to hear from the applicant at that time. So for members of the public, those 2 matters have been moved to the June 2nd, 2021 meeting without the need for further notice. As to any member of the public looking to comment on those matters, they are directed to the municipal website and municipal locations of publication for information as to how to participate in those meetings.
Do you need a formal motion on those?
I don't think so. We normally don't take it as long as there's no objection to the carrying them. It's in the best interest of the public. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, while I somewhat have the floor, I'll take advantage. The board is in possession of education material based upon the attorney-client privilege. I'd ask that the board review that at their leisure, but at some point, we will need to schedule an executive session to review that material.
Do you have a suggestion as to when? I prefer sooner rather than later, depending upon the length of the material to review and the calendar upcoming.
As I would certainly prefer the June 2nd meeting as well, but that calendar already is there. I think maybe we can discuss that. I hate to say this for the board at the end of the meeting, just to see where we are, but it should be either at the June 2nd or the June 9th, 2nd and 7 is 2 and 7 is 9 and June 16th meeting. Sorry for my math.
All right, so for the purposes of the June 2nd meeting, we're not going to put executive session on
Well, it's on as a placeholder always anyway.
but not to go in before we actually start hearing applications. If we can hear it at the end of the night, we'll go into executive session at the end of the night. All right, fair enough. All right, anything further, Mr. Guerin?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman.
All right, moving along, I'd like to swear in our professionals and have our professionals introduce themselves on the record.
Gentlemen, each of you have raised your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information, questions, comments, and testimony you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I guess whoever normally starts can start introducing. I changed it up once.
Yes, you confused us. Evan Hill, Board Engineer.
Ernie Peters, Board Planner.
Frank Miskovich, Board Traffic Engineer.
Jeffrey Paporo, zoning officer.
Thank you, gentlemen. With that, we'll jump right into the calendar, and that brings us to applicant number 2, Felix and Adelaida Rojas, variance 3367. Come on up. Gentlemen, once you get yourself situated, it's very important that you speak as clearly as possible into those microphones. The acoustics are terrible, so we're all doing our best to hear you, especially with masks on. Go ahead, sir, you may proceed.
Well, not yet. If you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or that you will present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last and your address, please?
Sure. Felix Rojas, spelled Road, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Rojas, I presume you're going to provide testimony, and there's a gentleman with you who's going to provide testimony?
I guess either one of us would be fine.
All right, well, then, go ahead, you may proceed. How can we help you, Mr. Rojas?
So I'm looking to get variance for our solar panels to be built on the side of our property. We put the application in once, and then we had to further come in front of you guys to get the approval. So the reason it was,
I'm sorry, could you just speak into your microphone? I can't hear you.
the reason it was denied the first time was. Is it on? Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go.
Wow,
Much better.
sorry about that.
Thank you.
Over, are we good?
Start again, because we need her to pick it up as well, so. I
Yeah, no,
appreciate it.
absolutely. So start with the first and last name.
Go ahead, yes.
All right, Felix Rojas, 240 Sunnybrook Road, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527. Spelling of the last name is Rojas. So the reason we come here today is because we are looking to have solar panels added to our property. And the reason when we applied the first time that it was denied was because it was considered front property. So we are in a corner lot and we're looking to put it on the side of the house. But technically, they said that it was considered a front line. So technically it's your front yard, even if it's on the side. So the real reason we don't have much of a backyard on our property, and we would like to put it on the side of the house because if we move forward to getting a swimming pool, that would kind of be where we would look to potentially get a pool.
As I look at a survey of the property that you provided with your application, there's an area in here indicated a trench of approximately 125 feet. What is that?
So that would be based, say that one more time, the trench?
Yes, it reflects, it's a trench approximately 125 feet. What is that? Does it have anything to do with the solar panels?
Yes. So I believe that's where the electric would run into the house. So it's 125 feet because it's on the side of the property. Oh, that makes more sense. Thank you. So yeah, so that trench is basically going to have the electric running into the property, into the house from where the solar panels will be at.
I guess either Mr. Hill or Mr. Peters, would you again assist the board in this concept of corner properties with no front yards and no backyards, so as to help us better evaluate the applicant's desire to put these solar panels where he wants to put them?
Sure. So if you refer to the exhibit that's up on the computer screen that was submitted as part of the application package, the applicant's home faces Sunnybrook Road, which is to the top of the page. To the right of the page is Freehold Road. This lot is a corner lot, therefore it has a frontage along each roadway. The applicant is seeking to place the solar panels in the portion in the rear of the way he uses the property. However, it happens to be within the front yard because of Freehold Road. That's what he's required to have received the variance for. It's just as if it was a shed or a fence. We see them quite often here. From a solar panel standpoint, it's an accessory use. It's accessory to the principal use. I'm sure this, like the applicant should clarify that the solar panels are specifically, it's a net meter type system, that it's specifically there to service your dwelling and your dwelling only, not your neighbors' homes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the solar panels are oriented in a southerly direction. I did notice on the aerial view, you have some hedges or larger trees to the south between where the solar arrays are going and Freehold Road. Are you proposing to clear any vegetation or trim any vegetation as a
No.
result? Okay, good. And then what are the height of the solar panels off the ground and to the very top edge?
It's 11 and 11 foot, 11'4".
The tall edge is 11 feet?
Yep, so it starts at 2
Mhm.
feet 4 inches to 11 foot 4 inches, so kind
Okay.
of like a slope back.
And it's just going to be grass and lawn underneath?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Evan, you don't see any other issues here in terms of the building setback line that I'm noticing or any site triangles? No safety issues, at least as you can tell from looking at this document?
That's correct. It's not in the site triangle that's recorded on the property. And again, it's technically in the front yard. However, the way the home is used, it's in the side yard.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Rojas, if we're driving down Freehold Road and turn onto Sunnybrook, is there any existing landscaping along the corner of your property?
Yeah, so there's a whole line of trees.
And about how tall are they? Plus or minus, taller than you?
Much taller than me, yeah. So
So-
you really would not see this. It wouldn't be an eyesore to anyone who is driving past our property. I took the time to actually ask our neighbors prior to even coming here today if it's something that would bother them. Because if it did, then, we'd go back to square one. But they all agreed that it really wouldn't be even an eyesore to even look at.
So, Mr. Chairman, the concern sometimes is the visual or the aesthetic of building something in a front yard. So they have the existing house, they have I don't know if it's half a tennis court, half a basketball court. They have this sort of privacy screening of landscaping so that they don't see the traffic out on Freehold Road, or perhaps they don't hear the traffic out on Freehold Road. And whoever put that in originally, it has grown to perhaps serve an additional purpose, which would be to somewhat limit the view of this proposed accessory structure in a front yard. So if someone came in and said they wanted to build a 1,500 square foot, 15-foot tall detached garage because they own boats or RVs or something, we'd say, well, how do we keep it from not being aesthetically imposing along the street frontage? In this particular case, I think they have an existing condition that would assist them with that. And Mr. Rojas, I know you had answered the question that you're not selling electricity to your neighbors. This system is meant to serve yourself only. It's not necessarily a commercial operation. It's a residential operation for you, and it's sized appropriately for your house.
Correct. So
Thank you.
the amount of units that we're getting will only cover the amount of electric that we currently use at our residence.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
So you say the screening that's there now doesn't need to be supplemented? Because, I mean, right now, his neighbors may be wonderful, but should they move and there are other neighbors that move in, they may not feel exactly the same way. Would it be more appropriate to have a little bit more screening along Freehold Road with the same type of material that you see or that you have there, Mr. Rojas?
If I might, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
go ahead, yes.
I don't believe that there's a requirement to buffer an accessory structure. However, because they are asking for a variance to place this accessory structure in the front yard, the request to make sure that it's shielded as best as possible would not be unreasonable.
How do you feel about that request, Mr. Rojas? Will you shield it as best or as reasonable as possible to keep it from view from folks out on Freehold Road?
Yes, I would. But I mean, if you were to look at 240 Sunnybrook Road today, it's almost like a wall of trees. So it's very hard to even see into our yard, period. But if it would require more, I mean, I'm not opposed to it either.
So maybe, if I may, Mr. Chairman, so the board has in the past in these sort of situations, as a condition of approval, ask an applicant, as an example, once it's as-built, to provide some information to the board engineer and board planner, and then left it to them to determine whether or not there's an opportunity to supplement the plantings at their discretion.
So what I've done in the past, and this hasn't been for residential homeowners, but it's been for the large commercial solar projects that have been built throughout the state. I, as the applicant's engineer, agreed to allow the township engineer to come out after construction, take a look at it, And if we needed to fill in or supplement any landscape buffering to shield it from the public view, we would do so at that time. So I would offer, if the board agrees, to, after it's constructed, visit the site. And then if I feel that there's any additional supplemental landscaping that should be installed, I can work with the owner directly. If he agrees to allow me to do that, then I think that takes that issue off the table.
Mr. Rojas, are you agreeable to that concept?
Yeah, do we, before I agree to that, how much more trees do you think it would be? It's really hard to tell. I want to agree, but I don't want to.
The answer there is nobody knows that until after it's constructed. I would say typically my experience has been you might just want to fill in the gaps that are more low-lying. If you have evergreen trees, they tend to die off as they get older and die off, the bottom 3 feet or so. So it might just be evergreen shrubs in a certain area. All we're looking to do is make sure, we're not looking to screen it 100%. We just want to make sure it's not an attractive nuisance, that's all.
I agree.
Thank you. Do you have anything further, Mr. Rojas?
No.
Any further testimony? Board members, any further? Yes.
I do. I have a question. Mr. Rojas, are you on septic or
It is septic.
it is septic? And are you also on a well?
On a what?
Are you on well water?
Yes.
Okay, so I just have a question for Evan or Ernie. Is there any concern about any part of this structure leaching into, that might contaminate if it fails, that it might contaminate the well water?
Now, I'm assuming these are polycrystalline panels. I'm seeing a head shaking up and down as yes. There are no liquids or any materials that are leachable out of the solar panels. Even if they're damaged, they're not. They're solids and they don't leach into the groundwater. So the answer is no. And it appears, just also for confirmation, the structure itself, is it going to be supported by driven posts? Yes. And I'm actually going to direct this to the homeowner, and you're confident that the location of this is not on top of your septic system?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Chair.
Safety issue, Mr. Rojas. The excess electricity.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what's being asked.
On the excess of the electricity that's being utilized, are you going to be sending some back to JP&L?
No, I don't believe so.
No.
No.
So,
Or swear him in.
Yes, swear him in.
Why don't we make it easy?
Yeah.
Sir, come on up, give him the mic, let him introduce himself. Go
Raise
ahead.
your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your affiliation, please?
Sure. Full name, Eric Crane, spelled C-R-A-N-E. I work with Ad Energy. We're the solar company that's designed and will be installing the system. Sorry, Eric Crane, that's C-R-A-N-E. I work with Ad Energy, the solar company that will be installing the system. Let's see, and I think address was the last.
Yeah, their address.
My address is 85 Taunton Road, Taunton, and that's Medford, New Jersey.
Okay, so to reunify my conversation, where is the excess electricity going to when it's not being utilized at the home? Is it going back to the electrical company?
It is. The way solar works is, I think it was said before, net metering. So sun out during the day, panels produce electricity, and the electric meter from that JCP&L installs before we turn the system on, it can register power that's used by the home and then also power produced by the panels that is fed back to the grid. But as part of the process, we apply to JCP&L and they review the output of our system to make sure that the grid can handle the output of the panels before we're given approval to actually install.
So are there DC batteries that are accumulating this energy and storing it?
No, there's no batteries. It's just the panels.
Through the chair,
Yes, Mr.
I have several questions. I apologize. I'd like to hear more testimony if you possibly could towards your the debt, well, your hardship. You indicated you're replacing the field because of potential future swimming pool that may go in. My question is, what we see throughout the township typically is roof-mounted solar panels. Why do you decide to go on ground as opposed to on the roof?
So the amount of solar panels we're actually putting in our property to produce enough energy for our household wouldn't suffice on the roof.
But could you still place panels on the roof and supplement down to the field? What was the logic in placing having a field rather than a roof mount?
So
Let's split up. You actually asked a compound question. I think the first question is, and this may be to the solar person, is there a manner in which you could have some on the roof and some on the ground? You need the mic to answer.
Oh, thank you. That's better. We could do that. We have done that for systems where the exposure is better. It's just a matter of, I guess it's easier to do it one way or the other. So if we're going to put it on the roof, we try to put them all on the roof. Or if we're going to do the ground, we're going to try to do it all on the ground. To split it, you're sort of pulling from both worlds of the mounting hardware and the crew, so it's just less efficient. So we try to do one or the other.
But testimony to hardship as to, I'm trying to draw from you why the field rather than the roof as a hardship. I mean, we need to justify why he's coming here for a variance. He's put it in the front yard, basically. So I just want to get clarification on why you're doing the field as opposed to the roof. I understand the logistics, but how does it pertain to his facility, his home in the setting? Is there an angle of a sun issue on the roof as opposed to the field is more beneficial, pulls more power? I mean, I'm pulling here. I need to hear from you.
Yeah, basically, the way the array on the ground is oriented, it's to sort of capture the sun at, I think it's 180. Yeah, 180 degrees, so direct southern exposure. That's the most efficient that we can get of the azimuth, so the direction that the panels are oriented, versus the roof, which you sort of be turning it away from the sun, so it's going to be producing more in the afternoon, but it's still less efficient. So the full southern exposure for the panels, you're just using the fewest panels you need and generating the most power you can by having it facing directly south.
Thank you. I have two more, Chair, if you don't mind. With regards to the field itself, how is it determined how many solar panels, what's his usage? How do you determine the amount of panels necessary to power his residence?
Well, basically, there's different programs to calculate the output of solar panels, or of a solar array. So you take into account the direction the panels are facing. So in this case, 180. And then the pitch we have control over, in this case, 25. And from there, there's actually a website maintained by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory that has weather data, so cloud cover, and for based on zip code. So they have that data aggregated over, I don't actually know the specifics of it, but you type in the size of the array, the azimuth, the tilt, and the shading at the site, and it gives you the total production over the course of a year. So we start off with the homeowner's usage from their power bill, which JCP&L gives you like 12 months, however many kilowatt hours that you've used. And we say, okay, if they've used, let's just say 5,000. We say, based on the parameters of the site, we add panels to the system until we say, all right, over 12 months, we calculate with shade and clouds and so forth, this many panels will give us that same usage of 5,000 kilowatt hours.
And you're looking to have him 100% off the grid, or what is the intent?
Basically, the idea is to provide cheaper power than the utility company. because you're still connected to the grid, you're still taking power at night from JCP&L, just that with the power generated by the panels, it's cheaper typically than what you're getting from JCP&L all the time.
I'm sorry, Chair, my last question.
That's okay.
With regards to maintenance, it indicated that it'll be post mounted on the ground. My concern is for the homeowner moving forward. I believe the homeowner testified that it's going to allow grass to grow underneath the panels. Is there not an impervious cover you can put over the ground so you won't have to deal with weeds and grass and maintenance?
We have done gravel in the past, but and in the
Well, I've asked
instances,
this of the homeowner. What's your intention here?
So when I had discussed that originally with my Sunrun consultant, that was something that it was going to be just pretty much grass. And he said it was very easy to still cut and weed whack around it.
So, Mr. Costanza, if I could add to that, solar panels constructed over lawns actually do very well, and orchards and so on. There's still plenty of light that gets to the panels throughout the day. And the state of New Jersey actually discourages people from installing impervious cover underneath solar panels. By doing so, if you install solar panels on top of lawn or orchard grass, prairie grass, those kind of items, you're not contributing any stormwater runoff as a result. It's once you start constructing hardscaping and hard improvements underneath that, that's when you're increasing stormwater runoff. So the state of New Jersey actually encourages people to build these systems and the much larger scale systems with lawn, with grass growing underneath.
And there hasn't been a pushback with regards to maintenance? Weeds that grow
Absolutely
along the
not.
poles?
Absolutely not. In most cases, the grass grows just as well as it does around it. In fact, in some cases, it grows a little faster and taller because it gets more shade than outside than unshaded. So it has historically not been an issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Rojas, we do have to clean up the record a little bit. The document that you submitted and that's up on the screen reflects that this document was prepared for somebody by the name of Flavio Sagne and Rita Sagne. How are you related to Flavio Sagne and Rita Sagne?
So this was done prior. I want to say it was last year. You're asking for the original prints?
No, let me start it again.
Yep.
You provided to us a Morgan survey of the property.
Mhm.
And on that Morgan survey, it reflects the owners of the property as a Flavio Sagne and then a Rita Sagne. And then as you look a little bit more closely at the document, as I'm somewhat familiar with surveys, this doesn't look like the whole document in that it looks like somebody took another document and overlaid it, because then at the bottom of it, it reflects it as a site plan. Felix, premises owner is you, Felix Rojas, and this is all done by AD Energy, Making Solar Simple. So it looks like somebody took two different pieces of paper, somehow put them together to create the document that you submitted to the board. So what I need to know is, one, is the gentleman sitting to your right, is he the one that ultimately facilitated this particular site plan drawing for the solar panel? That's number one.
We got the survey, the original survey from just as part of the zoning application, which I believe we got from the homeowner. And then as in the part of applying for the zoning permit initially, we took that and overlaid where we were going to install the array on top of that.
So who is the homeowner? Is it you, Mr. Rojas, or is it somebody else? It's you.
Yes.
All right, so you now own this property, not Flavio Sagne and Rita Sagne, correct?
Correct.
All right. So now you're familiar with the property, you're familiar with the drawing. Is what is depicted on this document accurate and true to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief?
Yes.
Is there anything on here that should be removed because it's no longer there?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have no further questions. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Mr. Hurley.
Mr. Rojas or Mr. Crane, these panels run from an elevation of 2 to 11, correct? So it's obviously a pretty good angle, I assume facing the southwest direction, correct? Okay. What kind of a wind will these withstand? My question is this: if we had a hurricane, for example, and the pressure below those panels gets a little greater than the pressure above the panel, this panel is going to be your neighbor's backyard. Can you answer that question for me?
Sure. We have an engineer who designs and stamps our plans. And as part of a permitting process, we submit the plans to the building department to verify like uplift and downward pressure and so forth.
So what kind of winds are we talking about?
Looks like, and I can't remember if these plans are submitted as part of a zoning application, but I have them with me. I don't know if I need to leave them later. But basically the basic wind speed is 116 miles per hour. And that's in accordance with the ASCE 7-16, section 27.3.2.
Just basically, I have a simple mind here. At 116 miles an hour, what happens? Sure.
So the short answer to your question is they're going to be required to submit a permit package to our construction official, just like if it were a structure, or just because it is a structure, but just like a building. And the building official will review the design package that they have to make sure that it's designed adequately to meet code for wind speed and wind gusts and 3-second gusts. For this area of the state, we're typically at 120 miles per hour.
So there are codes for
There
solar panels?
There are codes specific to structures and wind speed. So solar panels are considered a structure, and they have to meet. They were designed just as a building would be for wind speed.
Through the chair,
Yes.
if I could just follow up. So Evan, how are these panels anchored?
So what the applicant had indicated is it's going to be driven posts into the ground. So think of guide rail posts. You see guide rails. Those posts are driven via percussion into the ground. And that's part of the foundation design package that the applicant will submit for construction review, just as well as the electric.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any further questions from professionals? Mr. Haas, anything further?
No, thank you.
All right, then I'm going to close this section of the hearing. I'm going to open it to the public. All right. Oh, Anthony, okay, the screen popped up, Anthony. Let's see. It's telling me we have 24 total participants. We have 4 panelists, 20 attendees, and I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. Anthony, do you agree? All right. But I'm told there's like is there a 7-second delay or something for this? I don't want to cut anybody off. We're good? All right. But in that case, seeing nobody from the public step forth, I'll close the public portion of the meeting. All right. Mr. Haas, any further comment before the board decides?
No,
Nothing?
thank you.
All right, board members, it's ours. Any thoughts, deliberations, motion?
Given the presented testimony, I'm satisfied. I was a little reluctant on the hardship side with the roof in the field, but hearing further testimony, I've found this to be a satisfactory application and to put forth a motion to approve the application.
Subject to the condition that was placed on the record to which the applicant agreed to have Mr. Hill or an engineer post application to go out and take a look.
Agreed.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Haas. Your application is approved. You're welcome. Take care. Have a good night. Next up on the calendar is Mr. Kevin Walker, variance 3366. All right. Okay.
Can you hear me? Oh, here we go. Hi, my name is Kevin Walker. Last name is,
Too fast. Mr. Walker, you raise your right hand.
Sure.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
yes, I do.
Can you kindly now give us your full name, spell your last and your address, please?
Sure. Full name is Kevin Walker. Last name is Walker. I live at 635 Jackson Mills Road in Jackson, New Jersey. And I'm here for a variance.
Okay. Mr. Walker, you provided with your application a plan, a survey from Leaper Land Group that apparently depicts a pool that I presume you wish to install on your property.
Yes,
It's not there now, correct?
currently it's not there. We're seeking to get the variance due to our septic tank is kind of in the middle of our yard, unfortunately. So it kind of pushes us over 10 feet from the property line versus the 20 feet, which is required.
Okay. So in terms of how you ultimately came to determine the location, the desired location, I should say, of your pool, is you did this evaluation, I presume, with the pool company that's going to install it?
Correct, with pool towns, yep,
All right, and you were able to discern that getting it too close to your septic could harm the septic system?
correct.
And in terms of the overall topography of the property and the layout, that is the most efficient place to have that pool placed? Is that what you're suggesting to us?
Yes.
All right. You have something around the pool. It's hard to discern what it is from this survey. It's kind of small. Is that a patio, a concrete patio that you're proposing around it?
It'll be concrete around the pool, yes.
Okay, all right. Board members, any other questions?
Through the chair, if I may?
Yes, Mr. Costanzo.
Sorry, Chair. Sir, with regard, you indicate on the diagram, there's a 10-foot from the property line to the pool. Now, is that to the pool edge or to the edge of the concrete? Do you know?
That's to the actual pool liner.
Pool liner?
Yeah.
Okay. And the concrete walkway, what's the width of that walkway from the pool?
I think it's going to be about maybe 6 feet from the pool, like around, I think.
So from looking at your pool with the property line to the left,
Mhm.
you're saying the concrete pad is going to be 6 feet. So in a sense, there's only going to be a 4 foot of grass to the property line. Is that correct?
Around the pool, like when you look at I guess, the one side, that's where most of the concrete is going to be laid.
Towards the septic side.
Correct.
But I'm referring to the side that abuts your property line, to the east of the pool. How wide is that sidewalk, or not sidewalk? How wide is that path around that pool on that side?
I think it might be 4 to 6 feet from the pool. I think that's like their average, I believe so.
I don't think you understand my question. I just want to clarify that you're testifying that the walkway around the pool, the concrete walkway around the pool, the side which is east of the pool that abuts the property line, your testimony is going to be, it's going to be 4 to 6 feet wide, the walkway, you believe?
I believe it's 4 to 6 feet, but it's from where the pool is on the, I guess, the survey to the property line, it's 10 feet.
Correct. You said the pool liner will stop, the edge of the pool will be 10 feet from your property line, correct?
Correct.
I'm asking about that concrete walkway that's going to encroach upon that, within that 10 feet. How far into that 10 feet will that walkway encroach?
I would have to relook at that.
Okay. My second question, I'm sorry, Chair. With regards to the equipment that operates the pool, is that going to be within that 10? I'm looking at the diagram, and it's small, so it's difficult to tell where you're putting the filter, et cetera, all the equipment. Where is that going to be?
The filter will actually be where we have our current porch. It'll be behind the porch.
Where it says wood deck?
Yes.
So that's outside the 10 feet. It's away from the property line, correct?
Correct.
No other questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question through the chair. Go ahead, Evan.
Mr. Hill? No, go ahead, Mr.
I see a shed there. Is that an existing shed?
Yes.
You have utilities going out to that shed right now?
Yes.
You're not going to have a cabana or anything like that to be dressing and
No.
bathroom or anything else out there?
No.
That's what I'm concerned.
I'm sorry, through the chair, one question. Evan, what is acceptable with the septic field that he has in the backyard being centrally located? How close or how far should he be away from that field so
So-
he doesn't slip in there?
So the state regulations that govern individual septic systems require a 20-foot separation distance between the pool itself, not the sidewalks, but the pool structure itself and a disposal bed. And you're leading me to one of the points I wanted to make here. You had indicated that your pool contractor recognized that there's a septic field there, and that's why you're moving it over. Was that based on the survey, or was that based on your pool company doing probes for where the disposal bed actually is?
Well, it was based to the survey
It's based on the survey.
and
okay.
what they recommended.
Okay, so the note on the survey indicates that the septic area was not visible at the time of the survey, and it's based on a design plan from 1992. Typically, you really want to make sure you know where that disposal bed is, so you know you're 20 feet away. So if for instance, if your disposal bed is 4 feet shifted to the left, then your pool's going to have to be even further towards the property line. So usually when you're cutting it close like this, the board may want to see that some effort was actually made to really delineate the location of that septic disposal field. And there's different ways to do that. If you call a septic inspection company, they can certainly do that for a small fee, but it does nail down where that septic disposal bed is. That way you're not going to, when the pool company breaks ground, you're not going to have any surprises. So
Mhm.
I, as an engineer, would recommend that you do that.
Okay.
All right. Because if you get a variance for 10 feet and for some reason you need to come back to the board and ask for 5 feet because you don't know where that disposal bed actually is. So the location of that bed on this plan is approximate. It was never field delineated.
It was from the original survey.
It was from the original design, not an as-built drawing. And most of the time it changes. There's slight changes from one to the other.
Mhm.
So I think to protect yourself, I think you should, I would recommend you do that.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yes, Mr. Casale.
if I may, your fence line going along the side of the pool, per your diagram, your fence line exceeds your property line. Is that accurate?
Our fence is connected to our neighbors.
I'll say,
Our existing fence is connected to our neighbors. So the fence that you see over to your left is our neighbors. So it links to them.
so in essence, okay. Fine,
Yeah,
thank
because
you.
in between there's trees, there's like 18-foot trees. So they allowed us to link to their fence.
Through the chair.
Yes, Ms. McEnany.
Mr. Walker, just for the record, can you?
Ms. McElhenney, can you press your button?
Oh, it's on. I'm
Is
just
it?
not
Yeah,
close enough.
yeah, press
Sorry.
it. Thank you.
Is there any reason why the pool can't be relocated further back and maybe flipped 90 degrees? More toward where that frame shed is in that area of the yard? And if it were, Evan, would that, minimize the variance that's needed? I know I asked 2 questions there.
So it looks like, obviously, there's more room in that rear corner, but as far as whether or not that would minimize the variance, it really depends on where the actual location of that septic field is. There's nothing on this survey that shows the location of inspection ports, which typically define the bed, the disposal bed itself. So it looks like that's a possibility, but I can't answer that definitively.
Okay, would that be something, Mr.
Well,
Walker, you would consider?
We considered it, but it's very shaded and it's pine trees in the back. So we would have shade and then pine tree needles in our pool. So we were like, and it's really far out. So we, I guess our preference was it was next to the home where we would like have the pool. So, I mean, but we entertained that when we discussed it with pool towns. It was something that we discussed, but it was like, we'd have to cut down all these trees, these huge pine trees. It would have been a big ordeal. Yeah, thanks.
Board members, any further questions? No. Professionals, any further questions?
Well, I have a question even before, Mr. Chairman, and I guess it's to Mr. Hill. Do you perceive a way in which the board could vote on the application without knowing currently where the field is?
So I think there's two options. The option, and I think you can leave it to the applicant, really. I think one option is you grant, if you're inclined, you grant the variance as requested with the condition, subject to field verification of the disposal bed location, which would have to be provided to Jeff prior to releasing the permit. The second option is go do the inspection first and then make sure that there are no issues. I think it's really up to the applicant
But if I heard you
and
right,
the board.
if I heard you right, Mr. Hill, you made it sound like it's a relatively simple process to contact the septic inspector, someone to come out for a couple of bucks, and he's going to do a field delineation for him.
Correct. They'll
does
do
the-
soil probes within the bed area and chase it until they are within the disposal bed. That's
So,
correct.
so making a condition to obtaining the permit, it seems like a relatively reasonable approach.
It is. It is.
Mr. Rojas, is that something you can agree to? Mr. Walker, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, again, before, and I put this out through the chair and also perhaps to Mr. Hill, listening to Mr. Costanzo's concerns that any approval would not only talk about the 10 feet on the easterly side, not only talk about 10 feet from the pool to the property line, but 4 feet of the concrete from the edge of concrete to the property line. Because if he has to shift it over, you don't want him then to be able to, it doesn't appear, I should say, it's up to the board to deliberate. If he moves it over, in terms of making demarcations, you don't want the concrete on the property line, I would presume.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
If we adopt that procedure, is there an acceptable variation? For example, if the disposal bed is located 2 feet closer to the property line, that would be okay? Or if it's 4 feet further away, that the pool should be located 4 feet further away? How do we do that?
Mr. Hill, suggestion?
So I think at this point, the applicant is asking for 10 foot. He's asking for a variance for 10 feet from the property line. So any deviation from that, after the field delineation, if it comes back where he can actually be 12 feet away, then so be it. If it turns out that he has to be 8 feet away, he'd have to come back in front of the board.
Mr. Walker, you understand?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything further, board members? No? Professionals, anything further? Any further testimony, Mr. Walker?
No, not at this time.
All right. Don't close this section. We'll go out to public. All right. Anybody from the public wish to be heard on the application? All right, Anthony, I'm not seeing any hands up. I do see 19 attendees, but no one wanting to be heard. All right, I'll close the public portion. Bring it back. Any closing comments, Mr. Walker? I presume none. Board members, it's ours. Any motions, deliberations, thoughts?
I believe what we've discussed is apropos. Clearly, we need to know where that septic field is, as does the homeowner, because he doesn't want to have 2 swimming pools, because that one's going to be quite ugly. So I think it's clearly in his best interest that survey, whatever method, the survey, et cetera, to know exactly where your septic system is paramount to this application and to your safety and to your home. So with that, I would like to propose to vote in the affirmative for this, as long as that survey is conducted properly and meets all the necessary requirements. And if the pool needs to be moved eastward towards the property line, he needs to come back. If the pool itself encroaches within that 10 feet, he'll need to come back to
Or concrete.
well, the concrete already is.
Well, concrete not greater than 4 feet from. the
I'm sorry,
property.
correct, thank you. All right.
And the condition, I understand it, Mr. Chairman, would be that he conduct that septic survey prior to pulling a construction permit.
That is the condition.
And I would add this further as a question on the motion. I would strongly suggest to the applicant, doesn't have to be part of the motion, that he conduct that in between the time of a vote of the board and the memorialization of the resolution. Is if you find that you have to change it and the board has not necessarily memorialized the resolution yet, there may be a way to have you back in with the amendment administratively to address that concern and save you a little bit of
So,
process. All right, so
Mr. Walker-
he's now going to say that in English.
yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I have to. It's going to be in your best interest to have the inspection done in the next 2 to 3 weeks and have a report in your hand when you receive that email to Jeff and Dawn, and they'll forward it to me. That way, when we're sitting here a month from now, reviewing your resolution of approval, it sounds like, we'll have the answer in front of us. Okay?
All right, we have a motion. Conditions have been placed on the record. Do we have a second?
Here, second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Your application's approved. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay. All right. Next up, number 4 on the agenda, Robert and Laura Sturgis, variance 3365.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, board professionals, members of the public. My name is Jared Pape. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Heilbronn Pape. And this evening, I have the privilege of representing the Sturgis family. Before we begin the presentation, I would just ask if Mr. Gertner could confirm that our notice package was adequate for jurisdiction.
Yes.
Thank you. Recognizing that the board has a full agenda, we'll try to be brief. I'll begin with just a brief outline of this application and then go to our 2 witnesses we have this evening. So just as a quick overview, this property is about 1 acre, contains a single-family home, which is the Sturgis's primary residence. The property is located in the highway commercial zone. Use variance approval was secured from this board in the 1980s to construct that single-family home. And the applicants wish to install a swimming pool and shed on their property. They received a zoning denial letter prompting the need for variance relief, which is why we are here this evening. There's only use variance relief being requested. There's no bulk variances, no coverage issues, no setbacks. It's as it was stated in the zoning denial, what's being requested is an expansion of a non-conforming use since this residential property is in a commercial zone. So with that as the outline, I have 2 witnesses. Chester DiLorenzo is our professional engineer and Jim Higgins is our professional planner. The Sturgises are here as well. I do not intend to call them. And I think virtually is Anthony Schiavone from the pool contractor. Do not intend to call him, but he's available if there are any questions.
Mr. Pape, just one quick comment, and I apologize in one way I'll say. I see the variance plan as submitted indicates that Jackson Township is in Monmouth County. That hasn't been since 1847, so I just want to make sure that's corrected for the record.
We'll correct that. Apologies for the error. Should we swear in both witnesses
Sure, we
at
can do
once?
it at the same time. Qualify them. Gentlemen, you've each raised your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, I'll swear the planner in separately. Sir, if you can give us your full name, spell your last, and your affiliation, please, and then through the chair, he'll qualify you.
For the record, my name is Chester DiLorenzo, DiLorenzo. I'm the principal of Midstate Engineering, Inc. I've prepared these plans. I've made the grammatical error calling Jackson Township in Monmouth County. I apologize. I have, maybe. Thanks, Ernie. I have a PE license in the state of New Jersey from 1983, a PLS license from 1987. And because it is a long agenda, I've appeared before this board many times in the past. I would like to know if that could be considered minimum.
Your qualifications are acceptable, Mr. Di Lorenzo.
Thank you,
But
Mr.
I am going to ask you to put that mic closer.
I have distance and I'm vaccinated, so if it's not a problem, I will speak without the mask
Much
because
better.
I find them to be a problem.
Much better.
Thank you.
And you're testifying as
As the engineer only.
engineer, okay, thank you.
The property in question is located on the northerly side of East Commodore Boulevard. It's approximately 1 acre in size, 41,483 square feet. As the attorney indicated, there's an existing dwelling on the property. There's an existing strange-looking patio on the property that a previous homeowner, I thought was a skateboard trail, but it was just a walkway with a fire pit at one time and a basketball court. The Sturgises are wishing to put in a 350 square foot or smaller shed and put in the proposed pool, an 800 square foot patio around the pool. The site is reasonably flat. There's no drainage issues. There's exceptional permeability of the property. There are no bulk variances, with the pool being 25 feet from the property lines and the patio being 22 feet minimum from the property lines. Pool equipment's next to the shed, the septic's in front of the house, and the well is way far. A little bit closer, okay. So effectively, we're not for the fact that we're in the highway commercial zone. The building department and the zoning department would have accepted this plot plan and considered the application.
And as I had mentioned earlier, there's no bulk variances being requested. So I have nothing further from an engineering perspective unless there are any questions from the board.
Any questions for the engineer? No questions.
So if there are no questions, I would ask to go to our next witness, which is Jim Higgins, who will be the applicant's planner.
Good evening. Good evening. You've raised your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board shall represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, your affiliation, and briefly, the chairman will ordeal you regarding your qualifications.
Okay, surely. James W. Higgins, Higgins. I'm president of James W. Higgins Associates, located at 14 Tilton Drive in Ocean Township, Monmouth County, New Jersey, as opposed to Ocean Township, Ocean County, New Jersey. I've been a licensed planner in the state for about 43 years. I've testified before several hundred boards throughout the state as an expert, including this board in the past, before superior courts in 5 counties, and also been recognized by the state Supreme Court as an expert in the field of
Your
planning.
qualifications are accepted. Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you.
Mr. Higgins, if you could just identify the variance that the applicants are requesting and set forth the necessary planning testimony and support.
The site has approved use variance approval for a single family residence. So the principal use of the site is not being changed. It's not being expanded at all. You can still have the same size house, the same number of bedrooms, same number of occupants. The whole issue is that the applicant is proposing to construct 2 accessory structures, a swimming pool and an accessory shed that will function as both a shed for storage of swimming pool supplies and materials, and also for some yard maintenance supplies and materials. Essentially, when you look at it, I mean, I cannot think of a situation where a site is more particularly suited for a use than a residential site is suited for a swimming pool and an accessory structure when no variances, no bulk variances are required. So clearly the site is particularly suited for this use, for the proposed construction of these structures. There's no negative impact whatsoever that I can see. Again, all the bulk requirements are met. The only bulk nonconformity is an existing nonconformity for the setback of the principal building, and that's only 2.37 feet out of 200 feet required. It's the setback is 197.63 feet, where 200 feet is required. So the shortage is only a little over 2 feet. So, and that's an existing condition. It can't reasonably be changed. So when I look at this, I mean, the applicant is proposing an amendment to the site. Okay, I'm just told that there's a very, very, very brief, short, also existing condition for as far as lot depth. That's there. But again, that's not being altered either. But all your setbacks and lot coverage requirements are being met. So I don't see any substantial negative impact to installing this swimming pool on the site. And I do think that there are special reasons. Again, I think the site is particularly suited for the use. It's a residence, and a swimming pool is a typical accessory to a residential use.
Mr. Higgins, there's no doubt that we're in a highway commercial zone with this property, right?
That's correct.
That's right, okay. And there's also no doubt that even though the house is there, it's there with a variance. And now, are we not, by allowing this pool, and I'm going to use the word substantial as opposed to insubstantial, isn't the placement of a pool this size of a structure a significant enlargement of that non-conforming use?
No, first of all, it's not a non-conforming use. It's a use that's permitted by use variance, and the courts have been very clear about that. A non-conforming use is a use that predated the zoning that was legal prior to the zoning change. A use that's permitted by use variance, which this is a permitted use on this specific site. And there's a very, very distinction between those two. And the courts have actually said when you have a use that's permitted by use variance and you are either expanding or modifying that use, that the use variance remains in place and the board should just simply look at the negative impact of what's being proposed here. And realistically, while this is an HC zone, you have a residence on the site. It's a viable residence. There are other improvements on the site. And this site is not going to be changed in the foreseeable future to a highway commercial use. So putting the swimming pool on the site to allow the site to function better, to allow the family to enjoy the site that much more, I don't think is a substantial detriment. In fact, I think it's actually a benefit in this instance.
The benefit being to the homeowner. Is there any negative impact at all to the surrounding property owners that may want to put something there that conforms to the highway commercial zone?
No, I don't believe so. You have, again, you're meeting all of the setback requirements. You have the uses surrounding the site predominantly are residential uses. So that I don't see any substantial negative impact whatsoever to the surrounding properties.
I'm going to ultimately defer to Mr. Peters in a moment to discuss what I think what you're arguing is the R1 requirements, and I'm not quite certain whether that is what should be done here. So I'm going to ask Mr. Peters to chime in to help us explain the rationale that you're using. Mr. Peters, can you help us out on this?
Never want to try to explain Mr. Higgins' rationale. That's his responsibility. But to the extent that there is an existing home that's on the property, it's not illegal, so it's pre-existing. The land use code, it's pre-existing non-conforming. So any intensification of pre-existing non-conforming use would require a D2 variance. So the idea that someone built a house on a county road 50 years ago, and they've decided not to leave, even though the area is being developed as highway commercial, is not dispositive of then coming in and asking for a shed, a deck, a pool. It's an expansion of a non-conforming use. The property became non-conforming as the zoning or through the use variance that may have been granted for the property. But in this case, it's clear from the zoning officer's determination that before us this evening is a request for an expansion of a non-conforming use.
Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up, and this is for Mr. Higgins. There's been continued statements from both the applicant's engineer and yourself that you meet all the bulk requirements. Can you just expand on what that means?
What that means is that the proposed improvements to the site, the swimming pool and the proposed shed meet all of the setback requirements of the ordinance and also meet the
what
lot
ordinance?
coverage and impervious coverage requirements of the ordinance.
Of what ordinance?
Of the, well, either the R1 or your HC zone. But realistically, where a use variance is concerned, the courts have held and have held continually that the bulk variances are subsumed within the use.
That's understood, but I think I'm trying to attempt to assist the chairman a little bit and look at your
yes.
variance plan. And there's been this bold statement that you meet bulk requirements, and it appears that you
Yes.
you meet the bulk requirements of the R1 zone. You use that, it appears, as an alternative analysis. So is it your testimony that the board should view that statement?
Okay, my testimony is that what's being proposed here meets not only the bulk requirements of the HC zone, but meets the bulk requirements of the R1 zone also. So whichever one of those you apply. And just to correct my one statement earlier, that the principal residence is set back in excess of the front yard setback of both the HC and the R1 zone requirements. The only deviation is that both of those zones require a 200-foot lot depth variance, and the lot depth is 197.63 feet, so it falls 2.37 feet short.
Thank you.
For clarification purposes, there are no new bulk variances being requested in the HC zone. The R1 alternative analysis on the plan was there to demonstrate that if this were in a residential zone, the R1 zone would likely be the most appropriate zone to compare the bulk standards against.
Thank you for clarifying the record. That's really the
And I think just to elaborate on that a little bit more, the highway commercial zone does not specifically have requirements for accessory structures. So therefore, they're applying the R1 accessory structure setbacks to this plan.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Mr. Higgins, you had
Yes.
mentioned shed. Is there utilities going to be going out to the shed?
I do not know that for a fact, but maybe Mr. Di Lorenzo can testify to that.
I'm just trying to put it on the record if there's electricity or gas or.
Yes, I believe there's going to be
a
electric so they
bathroom
can
out there.
recharge lawnmowers because we're no longer using gas ones. But we're going to run electric to the shed. It's not intended to be a cabana by any stretch. It's
I wanted
intended
it
to
on
be
the
a shed.
record, okay. Thank you.
Well, I would clarify. So the 24 by 20 structure, and we don't know the height, but this shed won't exceed 15 feet in height. It's intended for maintaining storage of lawn care and not intended to be servicing the pool as a pool house or any of that nature?
It's not going to be a pool house. It's going to be for storage of equipment for lawn care, for yard care, and also for storage of some pool supplies, and possibly in the winter, storage of chairs and those types of things that are utilized around the pool. The house does not have a basement.
Is there a septic on this property?
Yes. Mr. Di Lorenzo.
How many
There is.
feet
It's in
away?
front of the house.
How many feet away? Oh, it's in front?
Yes, it's away from the pool. It's over 100 feet.
Okay. And the well is in the back?
Correct. By that strange looking walkway, it's, you see the existing well in the corner.
Okay.
Board members, any further questions? Mr. Hurley?
Just a question for Mr. Higgins. This was already granted a use variance, correct?
Yes.
Right. By virtue of that action, it seems to me that the use is inimical to the zone plan itself. Now, the board, obviously, I guess it was this board granted a use variance, and it must have done some balancing technique to indicate that the benefits outweigh the negative detriments. But now you're going forward. You're going forward to ask for an addition to that use. Now, the basic use itself, the underlying use, the residence, is not consistent with the zone plan. Therefore, the accessory use is also not consistent with the zone plan. How do you address that?
I addressed that actually by looking at a court decision, and the court decision is Paleo versus the Township of North Brunswick. That's a published decision. And that court decision says when a board has granted a use variance for a site, that the use variance is in place, and when there's any change to that site, the board should look simply at the negative impact and not at the positive reasons for the granting of the variance. When I look at this, it's a swimming pool on the site, and it meets all of the setback requirements for principal and accessory structures in the R1 zone, that if this were an R1 site, but it also meets all of the setback requirements for structures, principal structures in the HC zone. So there's no substantial impact on surrounding properties. There's no increase in the intensity of use of the site. It's going to be a single family residence, the same size residence, the same number of occupants. They're simply going to have a swimming pool out in their yard that they're going to be able to enjoy during the summer months. So when I look at this and you look at this, the standard that's been established by the courts is whether there's any substantial detriment to surrounding properties, and there is none.
Can you tell me a little bit about that Paleo case? Because I thought that case dealt with the various types of uses. One's a permitted use, one's a non-conforming use, one's a use granted by a D variance, things of that nature. I don't recall that case standing for the point that you just made.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. The case differentiated between a use that's permitted by variance and a use that's a pre-existing non-conforming use. And it stated that when you have a use, what?
Excuse me, that was a two-lot subdivision.
That's correct.
And the question came before the court as to whether or not the second lot, which was going to be a two-family use, rather than the first lot, which was a single-family lot. Now, I'm losing your thinking here.
Okay, what the decision said is that when you have a use, this was a situation where the site had been granted a use variance. And then they came in to subdivide the site, making the portion of the site that had the non-conforming use on it smaller. And the question was that a D2 variance? Because they were technically expanding the non-conforming use by reducing the size of the property that use was on.
It was
And
it was an expansion issue, whether or not
it was,
the creation
the
of
issue
that-
is whether that application, the vote on the application was 4 votes to 3. So it didn't pass as a D2 variance. The issue before the court was it a D2 variance? And the answer that the court gave was no, that site had already been granted a D variance, and the issue before the board was not whether the D variance was appropriate, but whether or not there was any substantial detriment because of that subdivision reducing the size of the parcel that didn't conform to the ordinance requirements. And it did say specifically that if the use has been granted a use variance, that then it's a permitted use on that site as opposed to a pre-existing non-conforming use, and that a D2 variance is not appropriate because it's not a pre-existing non-conforming use. When you look at the land use law says that a D2 variance is a variance for expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use. And that's essentially, I think your zoning officer, in all due respect, I think he looked at it, and many people do look at this as a pre-existing non-conforming use and think this is an expansion, and it's really not.
And Mr. Peters, that's why I'm a tad confused at this point. What standard, Mr. Peters, should we be using to measure this application?
If we're looking for a legal standard, I don't disagree with Mr. Higgins' position. I'm not in a place, I'd have to ask Sean to verify that the case, in fact, represents the law as it relates to this issue.
It was a trial decision that was appealed. Tried to quickly look at it, but my recollection in reading the case is, I think respectfully, that the applicant's planner is taking the application in that case one step beyond. I mean, some of his testimony, I think as to his planning testimony, the board can certainly evaluate the planning testimony, but I don't believe that the reliance on the case itself is as well-founded as he argues.
So if I may, I mean, it is our position that that case would apply here, which would change the planning testimony, but we'd be comfortable with the planning testimony set forth by Mr. Higgins, which does cover both the positive and negative criteria. If that is the standard that this board chooses to go by for this application, we're comfortable with the planning testimony that he set forth supports that variance as well.
So, Mr. Pape, if I'm understanding the position that's being taken, one or the other ways, at least as to the negative criteria, your position is that there is no substantial impact upon the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. Your position is also that there is no significant impact upon the surrounding property owners. But perhaps the part I'm missing on the other fork is the positive criteria and the special reasons. Can you elaborate on those going down that road?
Sure, I think I'll defer to Mr. Higgins.
Yeah, surely. Okay. If you want to look at this as a straight use variance or as a D2 variance, the standard is there something about this application that it's improving the functionality of the site? And in this case, I believe it is by allowing the residents to have a swimming pool that they can go out into their backyard and enjoy the swimming pool and enjoy their yard that much more. And yes, it's a benefit to them, but it's also an improvement to the site. And quite frankly, many, many variances you have before you are variances that benefit the homeowner more so than they benefit the surrounding area, but that's still something that advances the general welfare, because the homeowner is part of the general public and it does advance the general welfare. And again, as when I started out, when you look at the standard for particular suitability, clearly a swimming pool is a typical accessory structure, accessory facility for a single family residence. And there's substantial room on the site to construct the swimming pool and allow for adequate setbacks both to the rear and the side and the front, so that there is no substantial detriment. And quite frankly, because there is so much room on the site that allows this pool to be constructed in a conforming manner, the site is particularly suited for what the applicant is proposing.
I guess perhaps you can address the concept that's running around in my head a little bit and clarify it for me. If I flip the switch a little bit, and I'm thinking to myself, if this parcel was surrounded instead by residential zoned homes, and in the center was some type of a highway commercial use, so I'm flipping it both the other way, and I had an applicant who had a permitted use in here or a use variance for something in a highway commercial zone. And then he wanted to expand that use that would otherwise be permitted in a highway commercial zone. I'm thinking, wouldn't we be making the same arguments? Only that because it's a homeowner with a house and a pool, that sounds great. It just seems, yeah, this ought to be an automatic. We just ought to let them enjoy their pool in their home. But I'm trying to be conceptually honest and think if the zoning was flipped, that and we would be looking somewhat negatively at the expansion of a use in a highway commercial zone. Where is my logic faulty?
Are you saying if this was a residential zone and this site were were used commercially and the applicant were expanding it, then the board would have to look at what those negative impacts are. And if they determine that those negative impacts are substantially impact the surrounding properties, you'd be justified in denying it. And what I'm saying is what's being proposed here doesn't substantially impact the surrounding properties because it's actually an accessory to the residential use that's on the property and won't have any, in my opinion, there'll be no negative impact on surrounding properties. And I'm not just thinking a substantial negative impact, there will be none.
That was helpful.
Through the chair. Mr. Higgins, under NJSA 4055D2, the MLUL lists 14 different purposes.
Yes.
Which of those do you think that this application, what do you see as the positive for this application?
Well, the first would be, it goes back to the Medici case, which was the classic case for determining a use variance. And it's whether the general welfare is advanced. And basically what the court said in the Medici case is that if the site is particularly suited for the use, then the general welfare is advanced. And that's what the case is here. In my opinion, this site is particularly suited for the structures and the swimming pool that the applicant wants to put on the site because of the fact that there is so much room on the site to do this, and you can construct those facilities with the proper setbacks. So I think that, first of all, the general welfare is advanced due to the particular suitability of the site. In addition, purpose G, which is provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses, including residential and recreational uses. And here you have a site that it's already been determined that there's sufficient space on the site for the residential use. And the addition of the swimming pool is an accessory recreational use, which again, I think advances that purpose of the municipal land use law. So I think it advances both of those purposes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just further illuminate, I guess, using Mr. Costanzo's, one of his words he uses often. You know, my comment regarding Paleo, I think is supported from the following language from the case. And it's the court, the appellate division, just laying the background about this, what a use variance is. And I just want to read this into the record. I apologize, I can't give you the page. But therefore, this is the court speaking, therefore, non-conforming use is permitted to continue so long as the use does not substantially change. There's internal sites. Although a variance has characteristics similar to both a permitted and a non-conforming use, a use permitted by variance is clearly distinct. And I think that's why, respectfully, without going into the details and my opinion that there are differences, that the case can be distinguished from the 30,000-foot view. That's why the further testimony elicited from the planner, I think, is important, because there is a distinction between a use permitted by zoning and a use permitted through variance. And the court says that.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
And I also, as far as Mr. Gertner is concerned too, we have somewhat of a difference of opinion of how to apply that case. And that difference of opinion is somewhat universal. I've had this discussion with planners and with attorneys, and many attorneys agree with Mr. Gertner, and planners agree with Mr. Gertner, many agree with me. So it's part of the reason is the case is a little bit vague in some of its wording, in my opinion.
Any other questions from the board? No further questions? Professionals, any further questions? Nothing? Any further testimony, Mr. Pate?
Nothing further.
All right. No other witnesses?
No, the applicants are here, and as I mentioned, a representative from the pool contractor is available via Zoom, but no other witnesses I intend to call.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to close this portion of the hearing. I'm going to open it to the public. All right, we are now open to the public. I see on my screen, attendees are 20. I'm not seeing anybody with their hands up. Anthony, do you agree with me? Thank you. Seeing nobody interested to comment from the public. I'll close the public portion and bring it back. Mr. Pape, any closing statements?
Just to comment on the difference of opinion, as I mentioned earlier, whichever standard the board chooses to use, we'd be comfortable that either one would support this variance, whether you look at the standard addressed in the Paleo case or the standard for the use variance, which requires both positive and negative criteria. I believe that the testimony set forth by Mr. Higgins supports both.
Thank you. Board members, any comments, discussions, deliberations, motion? I'll jump. Okay, Mr. Hurley. go ahead.
Just very quickly, the interesting part of this application, I think, is that this is a use that is now a permitted use, permitted by variance, not permitted by the zoning that's lists the uses that are in fact permitted as of right. So this is a use that is permitted by variance. When the variance was granted, a decision had to be made that the use would not have any substantial negative impact on basically the neighborhood, would not have a substantial impact on the zone plan. Why ever that decision was made, I don't know, but it was made. Now we're here with an application that starts with the concept essentially that the use is not consistent with the zoning ordinance. And they want to add a use that is as inconsistent with the zoning ordinance as the permitted principal use, permitted by variance. But I'm looking at this application from a different point of view. As a permitted use by use variance, what we really have here is an accessory use to a permitted use. That's essentially what we're looking at. How it got to be a permitted use has already been done. That's not for us to decide. It has been determined that it should be treated as an expansion of a non-conforming use, which I can't disagree with that. And I agree that that is the approach that should be taken. But from the positive aspects of the applicant's burden here, they have already been established for the use itself as a residence. And if it wasn't established, a use variance would not have been granted. Now we're left with an accessory use to a use that is in fact, as I said, permitted by variance. If this was a permitted use by right, we wouldn't be here. It'd be a different scenario. I disagree that the benefits that Mr. Higgins addressed run to the community. The benefits run to the property owner, and I understand that. And I'm not disagreeing. Obviously, that is a benefit to the property owner. We have to look at the impact on the general neighborhood. It has been testified that the surrounding area is residential in nature, even though it is a commercial zone. It has been testified that the use variance has been granted, therefore the positive criteria has been established for the principal use, the residence itself. Now, as far as the D2, the expansion of a non-conforming use, I don't see any difference. I don't think anything has changed that would indicate that this should be used as a commercial use, which is in the zone it's located. Its surrounding areas are residential. There are, no matter which zone you look at, whether it's R1 or highway commercial, the bulk variances are none. It's consistent. So with reference to light, space, intensity, nothing is really being changed. There's no impact on the neighborhood, and therefore there's no negative impact in that regard. So based on that aspect, that the positive criteria has already been established in the principal use. This is only accessory to that principal use, which would ordinarily be permitted in any event. That the negative criteria, that the impact on the zoning plan has already been established by the grant of the use variance. And that the negative criteria, the additional negative criteria, the impact on the neighborhood indicates that it's a residential neighborhood, albeit in a highway zone, highway commercial zone. So in my opinion, I think the applicant has met its burden on the positive criteria and the negative criteria if I were to review it as a D2 variance. In that regard, my vote would be to vote yes to grant the variances.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. When I first was considering this application, I was very much looking at the surrounding area being a highway commercial use, and I'm thinking, that what we really do have is a fairly substantial increase in a non-conforming use. And so I was having some concerns, but I think after listening to Mr. Higgins as well as Mr. Hurley, in regards to the fact that there really is no true negative impact to the surrounding areas, and I like the logic that comes with the fact that that there was a prior use variance here, and there just seems to be an internal logic that if there was a use variance, those other considerations, positive and negative, had to be considered as well, and that an accessory use to this particular permitted, what is now permitted under that use variance, it just made sense. So from that point of view, I agree with Mr. Hurley's analysis, and I think the line I was going down initially, thinking that this was a substantial increase to a non-conforming use, I think that's the wrong path. So you've turned me around, and I'm in line with Mr. Hurley on this, and I would be inclined favorably as well.
At that juncture, I'd like to make a motion to approve this application.
I will second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. Your application's approved, Mr. Page, thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we jump into the next application, which is Gary Meyer, we are going to take a break till 9:05. We'll be back on the record at 9:05. Thank you, everybody. Everybody, oh, there you are, Kath. Okay. All right. Number 5, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, okay. That's all right. Mr. Mayor, before you begin, though, I just want to get a thought on the record for everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I know everyone saw the calendar. It was quite an aggressive calendar. We have Mr. Mayor, who is number 5. We have a 6, Mr. Hanson, a 7, Mr. Reese, an 8, Mr. Levi, and 9, the Facility 2 LLC. We will run our meeting tonight till 10:30. It is highly unlikely that we are going to reach all of those applications. We'll do the best we can, and we'll gauge as we go. I know there are counsel in the audience. If it reaches a point you wish to intercede because of the time constraints and to seek to have the matter put off, please let us know. But in the meantime, we will proceed. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Gersten.
Mr. Mayor, if I may swear you in first. Mr. Mayor, do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And sir, just for the record, you were here previously before the board, and the board is in receipt of correspondence. I apologize, it's undated, so I don't remember what day I received it. Let me read it into the record.
Thank you.
Because it may assist both Mr. Mayor and the board. It's directed to the chairman. At my first request for a variance for a carport, you expressed, meaning you, the board, in general, expressed your objection of structure being too close to the road and suggested it would be moved back from the road. I would like to be given that option to this issue and continue the variance process. I can remove one tree, move carport back an additional 8 feet, which would total 15 feet from the roadway and hopefully satisfy any concerns. That remains your position?
Yes.
All right. How did you come up with that analysis, Mr. Mayor, to move it back 8 feet? We were hoping you could move it back significantly more. What's preventing you from moving it back further?
Well, your initial assessment, you said you came to the house and you looked at it and you felt it was too
close to the road.
That's true, that's correct.
And you asked if any way I could move it back. And I said there was a tree there, and which I thought I couldn't move it back, but upon further, thought, I would like to remove the tree and move it back like you had suggested.
All right. I don't know that you resubmitted another drawing to show exactly what that location would be, but I do have a recollection of that testimony and some suggestion that perhaps you could move it back closer towards the corner of your dwelling. And I thought that was the direction you were moving in. And are you now suggesting that from the roadway, you would move it back an additional 8 feet from where it currently is?
Yes, towards the direction to the back corner of the property.
So the front of the carport would be, if I was using that as a marker, you'd be pushing it back 8 feet towards the corner of your house.
Yes,
All right. And that'll require the removal of a tree?
yes.
And would the dimensions of the carport be exactly the same, or are you going to change it?
It'd be the same.
Same thing. All right. So it's going to look the same size, everything is going to be the same. The idea that you're proposing is simply to move it back 8 feet.
Yes.
All right. Board members, any further questions of Mr. Mayor? In regards to his carport? No? Excuse me?
Should I make a motion?
Well, no, because you have to reopen to the public. And the other thing is, Mr. Hill, perhaps you can, just for the record, should the board act favorably, or quite frankly, even whatever the board does, we should know. Do you have any measurements based on, if you can estimate?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
So I think that's what I was going to ask for clarification on. Currently, the carport is how far from the property line?
8 feet,
From the property line or to the road?
property line. And
Property
it's
line.
7 feet to the road.
So it's an additional 7 feet to the road beyond your property line.
No, it's 8 feet from the property line and 7 feet from the road.
No. So if I'm on Oak Leaf Street, if I'm standing on the edge of the pavement on Oak Leaf, how far is the carport currently from the edge of pavement?
7 feet,
7 feet. And you're proposing to move it an additional 8 feet beyond that.
yes.
So that's not, the edge of pavement's not your property line. Your property line is actually probably close to 12 feet away from the edge of pavement. So where it currently exists is not even on, it straddles your property line. So what we need to nail down is how far off the property line are you proposing to construct, to relocate this? So if you look at the survey, not the one where you sketched it in, but the original survey of the property, your driveway meets up with Oak Leaf Street, but your property line's about probably about 10 feet from the edge of pavement. And then there's a 3.5 foot road widening easement in addition to that. So your structure at a minimum can't be right up against your property line. It has to be a minimum of 3.5 feet inside your property because of the easement. So what you really need to do here is we need to reference distances from property lines. And I think from a board perspective, whether or not it's 8 feet or 15 feet to the edge of pavement, edge of pavement's not indicated on the sketch that was provided, but it is on the original property survey. What I would recommend in this case, though, is we reference everything from property lines. And I think in this case, because we don't have an exact sketch or measurement from the property line, we need to kind of dictate that in the approval. And I would suggest you indicate 5 feet from the front property line along Oak Leaf Street. And that makes sure that it's not going to encroach within the road widening easement. And once you figure out that where that 5 foot is off your property line, you're just going to have to live with that. Okay?
Mr.
Whether
Hill,
or not it's,
Mr. Hill, I gotta interrupt you.
okay.
See, that's not my recollection of what I saw, nor what I remember the testimony. When I looked at it, when I looked at the sketch that he was drawing in, he roughly has that carport in its current location, current built location, approximately 7 feet from the property line. So if he's gonna go 5, we're actually allowing him to come closer to the property line. There's a deception here with that edge of pavement. I want to see him back 15 feet from the property line. So the front of his carport should be 15 feet back from the property line.
Okay, and that's where that's where you have to and that's why I went down this road with the applicant.
Thank you.
Because he was referencing distances from the edge of pavement and not his property line. And I wanted to make sure we were clear that the distances we're looking at, or that you're looking at now from your clarification, is you want the structure to be 15 feet from the property line, which is probably close to 25 to 30 feet off of the edge of pavement.
I can move it back that far with the tree removed.
Okay. All right, just so you're clear, right? Your property line is not the edge of pavement here. You're at the edge of pavement is probably 15 feet from your property line. Right?
Okay.
So what I would recommend you do is, well, I'm going to let the board go ahead and deliberate and vote, but make sure we reference dimensions from a property line and not edge of pavement.
And you perceive, sorry, through the chairman, you perceive, Mr. Hill, that if it is 15 feet from the property line, it would be approximately 30 feet from edge of pavement?
Just bear with me a minute.
Just to make sure the
28.
applicant understands.
Yeah, the edge of pavement is scaling to be about 12 feet beyond the property line. So if you're looking at another 15 feet inside the property line, you're looking at 27 feet
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
from the edge of pavement.
But the reference would be, in your recommendation, 15 feet from the property line.
I think that's consistent with what
Yeah,
the chairman
with
had
the
indicated.
chairman's
Yep.
talking about anyway.
All right, does that make sense to you, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, good. And apparently, we don't have to discuss the dimensions because you're keeping them all the same. You're keeping that same structure that we saw. That's the same one. And you're
Right.
going to move that back now 15 feet. So the front of it is 15 feet from that property line.
Yes.
All right.
Which would be 27 feet from the edge of the pavement.
Approximately, right. All right.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board?
He consented to that, correct?
Yes. Yeah. All right. Nothing further from the board? Any further testimony, Mr. Mayor?
No.
You good? Professionals, anything further? All right, then I'm going to close the public portion. I'm going to open the public. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Close this portion and open it to the public. All right, public. Anybody want to be heard on this matter? I'm seeing attendees, Anthony, 18, but I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. All right, we'll close the public portion. All right, board members, it's ours. Do I have a deliberation or a motion on this matter?
Put forth a motion of approval stating that the structure needs to be, will be 15 feet from the property line.
That measurement I didn't see.
Considered side yard, even though it's still.
I just saw it.
I could, in the process, I could move it away a couple feet, 10 feet,
Away from the property line?
No. The side
The
yard.
side yard, yes.
the side.
The side yard,
Yeah,
yes. Not closer,
right.
but farther. Okay,
All
yeah.
right, so I'm amending my motion for approval that the structure, no closer than 15 feet from the front property line and no closer than 10.
8.
No, he said 10.
10.
Did it? Okay,
That's what it said,
sorry.
10
Sorry.
To the side yard.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Frick,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. McElhenney, Ms. Camillo,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes.
Mr. Book.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Mayor, you got it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Through the chairman, Ms. McElhaney had indicated previously at around 9:20, 9:30, she would have to leave to attend to something. So Ms. Russell will now be sitting for the balance of the applications. Did I count right? This time,
I think you did. 1,
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5,
Thank you.
6, 7. Yes, we're
Thank
good. We're good. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Yes, you too.
Okay, number 6, Mr. Hanson, variance 3356.
Yeah, let Mr. Alfieri use that table.
That's right,
please.
Adam, go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, we're fine. Thanks. You're gonna have to stand. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. This is an application, the Hanson family is looking to put an addition on their home to allow Mr. Hanson's mother-in-law, Mrs. Hanson's mother, she's also here, not the mother, but Mrs. Hanson. And it needs a variance because it is an undersized lot. And there's also 2 kitchens because the mother-in-law is going to have a separate living quarter that we need to discuss as well. Mr. Hanson is our witness. We also have Mike Testa, our architect here. If there are any architectural questions, we'll call him for that.
Mr. Alfieri, if I may, just real quickly, as I was looking, I noticed that the check was written by a Sally Fidelio. I happen to know Mrs. Fidelio. She's a client of mine. I don't know that this has any reference to this application, but I just want to make it clear for the record. Is there any objection that I? Not-
No objection.
No objection. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hanson, you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your
Use the
last, and your
microphone.
address, please?
Ronald M. Hanson, RON. Ronald M. Hanson, RONALD, HANSEN, 18 Round Hill Road, Jackson, New Jersey.
It was a quick sidebar, Mr. Alfieri, between Mr. Gertner and I. I just need to know, is Ms. Fidelio the mother-in-law?
She's the one.
So that's a conflict he can't waive.
That's fine. So we could go with 6. It's a C variance.
I've got to step off.
That's fine.
Excuse me.
Put my chair hat on.
Sorry about that.
Put my chair. Give me that hammer.
All right, so
Okay,
the
you can
applicant
sit.
leaves.
You could say. Mr. Hanson, you and your wife own this home, is that correct?
Correct.
How long have you lived there?
21 years.
And you understand that the reason we're here is because you're looking to put an addition on your home.
Correct.
Can you describe for the board the purpose of that addition?
My mother-in-law lost her husband approximately 2 years ago. We brought her in with us, and just for quality of life and her independence, we would like to, what she has left, to keep her happy and let her have her own independency in her own little area.
Now, and that little area then would be is it a bedroom, a living area, and a kitchen, is that correct?
Yes, I'm not looking to put an oven or anything like that, just a little efficiency area for her, and that's basically
And the property, your property's a little over 40,000 square feet, where 43,000 and change is required. This, on either side of you are existing homes, is that correct?
Correct,
And these homes are all similar, all these lots are similarly sized?
correct.
There's a reference on the plans to a pond of some sort that's in the front of your property. That pond was there when you bought the property,
Correct.
but as a condition of approval, you would agree to remove that?
I am correct.
Okay, and in terms of there was one other question in the report that Ernie's report, the issue is this going to be a two-family home or a one-family home? So the question for you is this unit, this addition would be occupied only by your mother-in-law, immediate family member, is that correct?
Correct.
You will not rent it out. You would agree that any restriction that the board were to impose on the use for someone not related to you would be enforceable in any way that the board decides?
Will not be a rental at all.
Okay, and in terms of access, is there a separate access that your mother-in-law would have to this unit? Or this addition, I should say?
Yes, on the drawing, it shows a side entrance for her to end. There's no front entrance or anything like that. Again, I just wanted to give her own little privacy, her own little entrance to come in. She doesn't want to impose on my wife and I, coming in and out. So that's why.
And one final question is what else is located on this property other than the house and the pond that's ultimately going to be removed?
I have a swimming pool.
Okay, and that swimming pool is not impacted in any way by the addition?
Absolutely not.
That's really all the testimony we have. Mr. Testa, the architect, is here if you want to see a floor plan that was submitted or the rendering.
Yes.
Okay, do you have any questions of Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson, I always have a problem with a mother-daughter type operation because if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck, and it becomes a two-family home. You have a separate kitchen area, you have a separate entrance area, you have a separate living room, things of that nature. Is there a connection between your home and this addition?
Yes, there is.
What kind of a connection is it?
There, in my den area, there's going to be an opening where it's access also into my home.
Okay. So your mother-in-law has ease of access between both
Correct.
areas, even though she has a separate access into the building.
Yes.
Is it possible to set up, can you do it as just a one entrance into it? Does
I'm
she-
sure. I mean, we'd have to sit down with Mr. Tester and go through the architect and drawings and stuff like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that question was asked and we anticipated it would potentially be suggested. We have no issue eliminating that side entrance to the unit, to the addition. There is a little patio exit to the back so she could walk out to the backyard that we'd like to keep, but the side entrance we could eliminate if the board wants us to.
So would you have any objection that not only for you, but whoever may succeed you in title, so whoever you sell a house to, that this is to be a single family residence? It can only be occupied by people with, blood relation or marriage, something of that nature. You're not going to rent it out. You're not letting a stranger, it's not going to be a boarding house, anything of that nature.
I have no exception at all.
No objection, that is a restriction.
And we, on top of that, and I've done this in other towns, because this multi-generational housing is becoming more and more common. We could provide a deed restriction that puts the world on notice that it can't be used for anything other than a single family home. We have no issue with that either.
That's fine. Appreciate that.
Through the chairman,
Yes.
I'm sorry, unless Mr. Hurley.
I'm done.
Okay. You also agree that it'll be a single utility service?
That is correct. We're going to continue with single utility service.
And for the record, in terms of defining the immediate family, the board has become accustomed to utilizing the definition of basically what are Class A beneficiaries pursuant to the
I'm sorry,
inheritance tax.
Sean.
I'm sorry. The board, just as really for the record, and I don't have the language right now in front of me, but it's really for Mr. Alfieri. He's agreed to the deed restriction in general so that no one's surprised. the definition of the family unit and blood relations have come from how the state defines
That's
Class
fine.
A beneficiary.
It's the mother-in-law, so we have no
Yep.
issue with that. It's one person who's going to live there that we know.
So there'll be nobody other than your wife and your family member?
I have my wife and I have 2 children also at the house.
Okay.
So there'll be 5 total in the home.
Okay, that's what I want to find out.
Through the chair? Oh, no.
Yes.
Go ahead, Evan. All right, through the chair, can I get a testimony as to the square footage we're talking about here?
Why don't you save that for let the architect go?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So can I, for the chair? Okay. How many bedrooms does your house currently have?
I have a 4-bedroom right now.
4, and you're adding one bedroom,
One bedroom.
right? You're on a septic system?
I am.
Okay, you're aware you have to obtain approval from Ocean County Health Department
I'm
for
in
the
the pro-
expansion of the septic? Okay,
Well, from what I was told by them, my septic is acceptable for a 5-bedroom. So
Okay.
right now, we're in the process of redoing the leach field. So that's also being replaced.
okay, all right. Just as long as you're
Yep.
aware that this is considered an expansion. So if it was designed and permitted for 5 bedrooms and you're at 5 bedrooms, you should be fine. And then the other question I have for you is, being a 5-bedroom home, I believe you're required by residential site improvement standards to provide a minimum of 4 parking spaces on your property. You have a 2-car garage, correct? And then you have a rather large driveway attached to your 2-car
Yes.
garage. Is there any, from my perspective, there doesn't appear to be any issues with on-site parking, but can you accommodate four vehicles?
I have 4 vehicles in it now. So-
Okay, well, can you accommodate an additional vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Yes.
Can you use your microphone, please?
Shut it off because of the incident.
We're
To
going
my
to ask
under-
the architect. I'm not sure.
Okay, because to my understanding, what deviates a 2-family from a mother-daughter is a stove, an oven. If you have like a kitchenette, then it's considered a mother-daughter. If you have a stove, it's considered a 2-family.
I'm not sure we agree with that, but we'll find out what the kitchen description is.
Well, that's what I was told when I did this exact same thing.
Oh,
So we did not run a gas line, although we were told we could, and then afterwards, go ahead and put the oven in. We did not do that. So my question is there going to be a gas line? Because if you decide that you're not going to do it, the next person who purchases the house may decide that they could turn it in to that. So that would be a concern of
Right.
mine. May I ask how old she is?
78.
Okay, so I do have a concern removing that door, Mr. Hurley, only because of safety purposes.
Right.
If there is a fire, I feel like she may need a way out of the house for safety purposes instead of having to go through your existing family room, through the entire house to get to the front door, or maybe those back steps. I don't know how many steps are off of that back.
Right.
But I feel like there should be some sort of a way for her to get out. But I understand Mr. Hurley's concern as well. But for safety purposes, if she needs to get out of the house, I'd like to see her be able to exit the house.
There is a sliding door proposed at the back of the addition.
Okay.
But the architect could describe that a little better for you. And then we defer to the board on that side access point. Whatever the board decides is fine.
Mr. Chairman, another question, if I may?
Yes.
While we're on the topic of the kitchen, is it possible to set this up so that you can have the shared kitchen between yourself and your wife and your mother-in-law? I know you want to give her some independence, and I appreciate that. I'm probably getting there myself. How about a microwave,
And we were discussing that, my wife and I, of not putting a stove and just giving her a little microwave just to warm her food and Basically, we do her cooking anyway. We bring it to her. So,
So you can share the kitchen.
yeah.
Any other questions?
We just, on the kitchen point, we just want to clarify that she's going to, microwave and maybe refrigerator and the counter, but no oven.
Correct.
So she could do something independently if she wants to warm up food,
Right.
but not to cook food. That's okay with the board. You're okay with that?
Just out of curiosity, how close is the existing kitchen to the addition?
It's on the opposite side of the house. I would say it's a little further from where you're sitting from where I am.
And we'll bring the floor plan up when Mr. Testa comes up. You could maybe see that a little
Yeah,
better.
I remember seeing it.
Thanks. You could slide over one. And Mr. Testa did submit these exhibits in advance, so if we could bring up well, that's,
You're gonna have Mr. Testa sworn in.
Mike's going to get sworn in. Yep.
All right, sir, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last,
Sure.
your affiliation, and through the chairman, he'll ask you some qualification questions.
Great. My name is Michael Testa, Testa, registered architect, state of New Jersey, and principal of the architectural firm Michael V. Testa Architect, 701 Manalapan, New Jersey. Licensed architect since 1996, principal of the firm since 2002. Practiced and testified all over the state. I have not had the pleasure of testifying here, even though I'm only a town or two away.
Okay, it's been accepted.
Thank you very much.
And Mike, the exhibit that's up on the screen now, can you?
Those are not the exhibits. I was wondering, we have, that exhibit up there was something that was submitted to the building department that was rejected, and we created 3 separate sheets. It's a Z1, a PB1, and a PB2. Well, I went old school on you guys tonight, and I brought boards.
Yeah, Mike indicates that they were submitted in advance, but I did not submit them, so I don't know. But we do have a hard copy if you want.
Well, while you're doing that, do you have access to the email that submitted them? I don't. It's been so long.
Yeah, this was submitted in September, this application, so we're not sure.
I could walk through those drawings. If the sheet A1 is on that set, I can definitely walk through the floor
Do your
plan for you.
best.
Okay, there's Z1. That's what I was talking about. Great. Correct. So the next sheet would give us the floor plan. There you go. Okay, the exhibit you have in front of you is sheet PB1. This is a floor plan of the first floor. To the right of the plan, which has minimal amount of information, is the existing residence. As you can see at the bottom of the plan is the existing entrance to the Center Hall Colonial with a set of stairs in front of you. Left is a living room with a sitting area in the back, a large family room that goes out towards the pool. And as you can see in the rear right corner is the existing kitchen. The left side, thank you, Sal. The left side over here is the proposed addition. There is a door located right here that will allow access between the new addition and the existing house. This was the least detrimental location for the door that would not disrupt the existing living spaces. It's the closest to the focal point of the house, which is the rear living area. As we talked about before, this is the side entrance that we were willing to remove from the project. The front of the property, or front of the house, is a bedroom for Ms. Filio. She has a little bath that has like a Jack and Jill door to the front, a laundry room for herself, and the kitchenette area. As indicated before, there is no stove indicated. We have a sink, a dishwasher, a refrigerator, counter space for microwave and toaster oven, toaster, coffee maker, etc., and a island here. Mr. Figlia still is very active with some friends, and the big thing was to have the ability to have her friends over to enjoy her space without interrupting the lifestyle of her family. And that was the main reason of having her own spaces, and also having the luxury to interact with her family on an as-needed basis, coffee in the morning and dinner at night. She has a small living space in the back here, and we also added a gas fireplace. You know, as you get older, there's a tendency to get colder faster, so this way she has her own heating unit that would be located in the basement, so she can control her temperature separately than the main living area. And that's the extent of the proposed plan and how it relates to the adjacent structure.
Through the chair? Yes. My question, how many square feet are we adding?
867 square feet. The existing house is 2,376 square feet, not including the basement.
Are you proposing all doorways, et cetera, to be handicap
Yes,
accessible?
Yes, it'd be adaptable in a sense.
Adaptable.
Again, we do a lot of these extended family living for aging population, and biggest concerns are showers, not tubs, areas where we put blocking in the wall. So if there was grab bars that needed to be put in the future, we may have all these amenities like I would do if it was an apartment building.
And I'm sorry, can I just have the square footage one more time? My computer, I hit the wrong button.
No problem. It's 867 square feet, and that number is indicated on sheet Z1 with the site plan where we have the little addition indicated.
Thank you so much.
Through the chair?
Yes.
A question to the architect. It's been proposed to possibly eliminate the side entrance. What is your feeling as a professional as to safety and building code?
The building code, we have a bedroom which requires egress windows, which we're providing. We have the rear access to the yard, which is more of a convenience, so she can interact with her family during barbecues and then leave to go back inside or just go out there when she wants to. In dealing with the client over this, we started this job in 2019. Her desire to have that independence and still feel like her own self, that door is important for her. If the board deems it's not necessary, she's willing to give it up. That's not a problem. But she wants to come home, walk through her door, in a sense, feel like it's her place, even though it's part of her family's home. She just has a side door. It's no different than a side door in any other house.
A follow-up question, if I may, Chair. With regards to the side entrance, will that also be wheelchair compatible in the future?
At this time, it's not, it's stairs, but the ability to put a ramp from the front of the house up is there. We looked at that at one time, to have stairs going to the back and a ramp to the front. She doesn't need the ramp at this time, but the ability to put one in the future, this is possible.
Through the chair. The garage is on the opposite side of the house, so hers, if the side entrance is to be accepted, are we talking about an extended sidewalk?
It would just be continuation of the sidewalk at the front walk across the front of the house to the side door. I do not believe that's depicted on the site plan that I had received from our surveyor, but that would be the approach to getting to that side door.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Hurley?
Just one more question, just for clarity. Mr. Hanson, Mr. Hanson, how many, you had 2 children and your wife, so that's 4. On the addition for your mother-in-law, she is to be the sole occupant of that area?
That's all. It's just going to be my mother-in-law there.
Okay. And you have no problem with a restriction in that regard, correct?
No.
Thank you.
No other questions for the architect?
That's all we have.
That's it?
Yes.
So I guess we'll go to the public. Any questions, anything else? All right. Anthony?
Are there any professional comments?
Yeah. One hand? Or why don't we call that person? Who is it? Vincent? There you are. Come on up.
Yes, hello?
Vincent?
Yes, I had a question regarding the existing problem with the septic.
Sorry, hang on, and can you please turn on your camera as well? Thank you, sir. All right. Can you virtually raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information, questions, comments, or testimony you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please.
Sure. Vincent Pungello, Pungello. Address is 19 Round Hill Road, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527.
Okay, Vincent, why don't you ask your questions, or if you have any?
The only question we have really regards the issue with the septic tank. There's a perpetual leak into the street. It's happened for the last couple of years. It's never been addressed, and it's been causing a problem both from a sanitary perspective and a smell perspective. Wondering how is that going to be addressed if there's an addition to the property, additional person living there. We never mind having someone, move into their home. It's a family issue. However, the septic has been years and has not been addressed, and it's causing a problem in the neighborhood.
Had your septic pumped recently, sir?
Wait.
Septic has been pumped multiple times, and we are working with Brewer's Septic as we speak to have that repaired. We've been in contact with the Department of Health. This septic field is acceptable for the additional bedroom. It is acceptable for it.
And any approval would have to be conditioned upon Board of Health approval of the septic system.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and that should be a condition for resolution compliance, obviously.
Sure. Yes, to respond to your question, the Board of Health will have to look at the septic system and we'll have to pass their inspection.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Vincent?
Yes.
Any more questions? Anything else? Anything else, Vincent? Okay, anybody else out there, Tony? Nobody's raising their hand. Okay, it's up to us now.
Well, so, Mr. Chairman, you have closed the public portion.
Close the public
And
portion.
you've asked Mr. Alfieri if he has any summation.
No summation. We will agree to all the conditions that the board has discussed and we've already agreed to during the course of the testimony.
Okay, so it's up to us, board. I'd like to hear your positive, negative, and a motion.
I'd just like to discuss the concern raises about the side entrance. Feelings on that. I feel, I don't have an objection to it. I think it's more of a safety issue as described by a fellow board member that in case of emergency, her accessibility to egress the house is demanding without that side entrance. Although there is the rear entrance out of the rear yard, I acknowledge that.
I think James had brought up the fact about the side entrance, right, James?
Yeah, I brought it up only to separate it, make sure it's not a multi-family type of use for that purpose. Obviously, if there's a safety issue for escape from fire, I know there are regulations that address that anyway. So I have no problem with that.
You would agree with the safety issue?
Well, the argument, someone should articulate it one way or the other. The argument is whether or not the addition of that side ingress and egress further leads to the potential of having creepage to a two-family use.
But we'll get a deed restriction on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my feelings on that.
All right.
I mean, I think safety is paramount. The fact that we put a deed restriction on it would help any type of enforcement that'd be necessary down the road if the property ever to be sold.
You want to put a motion up there?
Everybody.
I agree. I mean, if there's a woman-
I can make a motion.
You'll make one?
Sure.
Go ahead, Jim.
I move that this application be approved for the following reasons. One, obviously, there's a benefit here. It's a mother-daughter type operation, and it's a general benefit to the general community. I hate to use the word elderly because I'm older than she is. But that is definitely a benefit to be acknowledged. I know that there are issues out not only in Jackson, but in New Jersey, where families are separated and need to support each other. And this is one way of supporting the family operation. So I give them some credit for that. As far as the negative concept is concerned, negative criteria, it is a residential use and will continue to be a residential use. And if there is a deed restriction that limits the occupancy of the addition to family members, so long as it's in that concept of a single family, that family member being either by blood or marriage, as Mr. Gertner had explained, I don't see any substantial impact on the zone plan in that regard. It's a residential use. As far as the negative impact on the neighborhood, there have been no major objections. He's already addressed the issue with the addition of the residence and its impact on the septic system. That's going to be taken care of. So the zone plan is as far as I'm concerned, there's no substantial impact, no substantial negative impact on the surrounding community, the neighbors, things of that nature. And it's a definite benefit. The positive criteria is satisfied in that regard. So I would move that the application be granted subject to the conditions that have been imposed with deed restrictions and others.
Just a thought as you were, the question about the gas line, is that a concern within the motion or should be addressed?
Gas line.
Well, I think the issue is that there was already testimony that the gas line will only be utilized for that gas fireplace, and there's not a stove. So while there may well be a gas line available, they've already agreed based on the plan submitted that it won't be utilized for a stove or an expanded kitchen.
How about heat? What kind of heat is it?
Well, they have a separate heating unit too, right? Yeah, so.
Okay, so I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Costanzo,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Camello,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
No, we have one more.
Well, he didn't vote no yet. He's pointing to Ms. Russell
Ms. Russell.
to call first.
oh, I just assumed, Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Najarian,
Yes. All right, you have your.
Thank you.
Good luck, folks.
Oh, well, we did.
You had at least two separate.
I took a nap.
You heard it. I see you. We put a deed restriction on.
So that was Hanson, right? Okay, we're back up. I've had my nap. Thank you very much. Number 7, I believe, Pincus Reese, variance 3357. All right. Mr. Pfeffer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Adam Pfeffer, attorney on behalf of the applicant, Pincus Reese. The application this evening is for a single-family house located at 848 Green Valley Road. It's a undersized lot. We're in the R3 zone. The property is approximately 2.45 acres in size. As we stand today, there are 2 single-family houses on that property. Both of them will be removed. I have this evening, we have testimony from Mr. McFarland. I also have the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Reese, here as well, if we need to address any questions. It should be noted, just as you take in some of the testimony, The application is for again, a one-story, single-family ranch. Unfortunately, Mrs. Reese suffers from multiple sclerosis, so there are some design features that were done specifically to make her life a little bit easier, and we'll get through some of that testimony. At this time, if we can, swear in Mr. McFarland.
Very well.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland, for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your affiliation, and then through the chairman, he will voir dire you as much as he chooses.
Sure. Graham McFarlane, MACFARLANE, professional engineer, professional planner, a principal of professional design services, previously testified before this board.
Yes, you have, and your credentials are accepted. You're testifying as a planner or an
I-
engineer or both?
Correct. I'm testifying for both this evening.
Both sides. Okay, very
Yes.
well. You may proceed.
Yes, if we could get, Anthony, get the variance plan up on the screen. The lot plan, variance plan. That's one, and if you can just, just zoom in there in the middle of the plan, so we can just discuss this for a little bit.
So we'll mark that as A1, even though it's part of submitted plan.
Correct. Yes, what the board sees on the screen is A1. This is the plot plan that was submitted in support of the application. This shows our proposal to build a new home in this area. The project will also include a new in-ground swimming pool and a new tennis court, both to provide for private recreation. You also see location of the proposed septic disposal field that we have shown in this portion of the subject lot. The subject property is located along Green Valley Road. You'll see Green Valley Road to the right-hand portion of the map. We are proposing a loop driveway, essentially consistent with the existing driveway that is on the property. The existing lot is within the R3 zone, and the property contains a land area of about 2.45 acres. By definition, it's considered an isolated, undersized lot. We do show proposed curb and sidewalk along the front of the property in accordance with ordinance requirements. I'm going to defer to the board's discretion whether they prefer the curb and sidewalk to be installed along this particular piece of property, or whether they would prefer a contribution in lieu of to the pedestrian safety fund. There are a couple of mature trees along the front of the property that I believe there are 3 mature trees that would be removed based upon the curb and sidewalk installation. So I think that's something for the board to consider. There was no other curb or sidewalk in the vicinity of this particular property. As to the application, it is our intention to construct a new single-family house, ranch style, of about 3,700 square feet. There are 2 existing homes on the property right now. So there was an 848 Green Valley and there was an 848B. 848B, it doesn't show on this plot plan, but is located right about here, where it's a smaller dwelling than the main structure right now, number 848, which is located essentially within the footprint of the proposed home. When we decided where to locate this home, we took several things into consideration. One was the portion of the site that was previously disturbed. That's why we have the new home located basically over the footprint of the existing home. We are trying to minimize the disturbance to the rear of the property, which is wooded. So that partially creates the request for the front yard setback variance. We are requesting the front setback to be 60 feet where 80 feet is required. And I'll offer some additional testimony on that when I show the aerial map. We're also requesting side yard setback variance to the home and to the in-ground pool on this, I guess that's the east property line. The lot that sits behind the subject property is a flag lot that has frontage here, and the existing house on that lot is back here behind our proposed home. That these two lots were created by a subdivision in 1986. At that time, lot width required was 200 feet. That subdivision was approved to create the non-conformance of the lot width of our existing lot of the 157.8 feet. So that's a condition that we don't have any control over, that existing lot width deficiency, which is being maintained. That also attributes to the request for the variance for the side yard setback. We are also proposing with the application a private tennis court, and associated with the tennis court, we're proposing a 12-foot high chain link fence. The ordinance does anticipate fences for tennis courts, and it does permit a maximum height of 12 feet. But that ordinance section specifically discusses public tennis courts. It does not provide any language or direction for private tennis courts. So my opinion is that we do need relief to obtain approval for that fence to be 12 feet high on a private for a private facility. Anthony, if we could go to the aerial map next.
We'll mark that A2.
Yes. Yes, so what the board sees now is Exhibit A2. This is an aerial display that shows the subject property outlined in yellow, essentially in the center of the map. You can see the surrounding properties all contain existing single-family homes located along Green Valley and along Denmark. We did a tabulation to assess character of the neighborhood and to determine how this lot fits in with the character of the neighborhood and how the proposed home fits in with the character of the neighborhood. We limited our study to what you see outlined here in orange. I defined that as that's basically the immediate neighborhood of the subject lot. Within that area, within that immediate neighborhood, there are 19 lots. 18 of the lots are undersized, and most of them are right about 1 acre in size. And again, keep in mind that the subject lot is 2.5 acres. The only lot that conforms to the R3 zone criteria is this lot here on the left edge of the screen, which is lot number 26, which is 5.14 acres. And you can see that lot does have basically a flag lot arrangement where it has a stem and then significant portion of the lot located in the rear. We also took a look at the setbacks of the existing homes along Green Valley Road. And Anthony, maybe you can zoom in on this for me. And if you can pan this up when you get there. Just a little bit more, up a little bit more if you can. There we go. And then just a little, up, not so much. And then take it a little bit to the left.
It's like hanging a picture.
Perfect. Good enough anyway. Again, you can see the subject lot here. It's hard for the board to see, but we did take a look at the setbacks of the existing homes, and the dimensions are on this particular display here. Of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of the nearest 8 homes on Green Valley Road, 6 of those homes do not meet the front yard setback. You can see that they are approximately 37, 68, 42, 43. There's one that's 33, and then the next house up here, lot number 15, is 68 feet. Across the street right there is lot 32 on Denmark is 61 feet. Directly across from the subject, This lot number 19 is 64 feet. So there are a significant portion of the existing homes in the immediate area that have a setback that is less than or equal to the setback that we're requesting for this particular home. So I believe that request is reasonable and was done so in consideration of maintaining character of the existing neighborhood. Based upon these factors, Mr. Pfeffer is going to provide information on the buy sells just to confirm the requirements for the isolated undersized lot. But based upon these factors, I believe that this proposal satisfies the criteria of the isolated undersized lot since a hardship exists that cannot be remedied. The applicant's proposal to request the associated bulk variances can be granted consistent with the C1 standards by reason of unique circumstances, topographic conditions that affect the lot as well, and practical difficulty with satisfying the ordinance requirement. The proposal to redevelop the lot with one single-family home is a better planning alternative than the current condition, as it promotes a proper use of the land consistent with the local ordinance and the master plan by eliminating the two principal dwellings on the property, which is not permitted by your ordinance. It is my opinion that this contributes to the well-being of persons and promotes a desirable visual environment. I would also stipulate that the redevelopment of this parcel with one single-family home in a municipality with approximately 20,000 housing units does not rise to the level to create any negative impact to the municipality or to the surrounding neighborhood.
I have a question through the chair. Yes. How many bedrooms are you planning here?
There are 2 bedrooms proposed on the first floor. If we could put up the architectural plan. So what we have here, and I think that's marked A3.
Yes, please, thanks.
A3 is an elevation view of the proposed home. This elevation or this rendering was done before our client decided to add the garage to the home. So there is now a garage proposed on this right side of the home. That's the only change to this home. And you can see that the appearance of the home is rather modest, and it will certainly be consistent with the character of the neighborhood, which has a mix of housing styles and architecture up and down Green Valley and up and down Denmark Lane. If you could go to the next sheet, there should be a floor plan. And maybe you can zoom in, Anthony, on this is the first floor. Maybe you can zoom in on that. So you can see here in the middle, this is the first floor plan. Has a footprint about 3,700 square feet. Of course, a ranch-style house, a patio in the backyard, and then the swimming pool and tennis court would be back in the rear. We're also proposing to finish the basement, which is shown over here on the right side of the sheet. This plan calls for 2 bedrooms on the first floor, and it calls for 5 bedrooms on the basement level. So a total of seven bedrooms would be proposed on the lot, which is 2.5 acres.
Is that septic system going to be able to accept all those extra beds?
Yes, we're of course going to build a new septic system for this property, and that will be designed to support that number of bedrooms, and of course will have to be approved by Ocean County Health Department.
Yes.
Can you use your microphone, please? I can't hear the question.
This is technically a 3-bedroom first floor. It's called a lounge area, but it has a powder room, but then it has a shower and it has a closet. So those 3, that's a bedroom.
Well, what you're referring to, I think, is right here. And the architect identified it as a lounge area, which is basically to service the in-ground pool. So the purpose of that room is for the owners and their family to be able to utilize that as a changing room and for access to a bathroom, you know, when they're outside enjoying the patio and the pool area. If the health department or somebody else determined that by building code that had to be classified as a bedroom, then of course that would be the stipulation. You know, could potentially be the stipulation from a design standpoint or from a building code standpoint, but as right now, it's identified as a lounge area and not intended to be sleeping quarters.
I have another question. Is there an outside entrance to this basement?
There is no direct outside entrance to the basement proposed. There is the main entry is here. There's a secondary entry here by the garage. Let's see, there's an exit here at the garage. Then there's exit in the back to the patio area here and to the patio area here. There's no direct access to the basement from outside.
What about from inside the garage
From inside the garage to where?
to the basement?
The garage to the basement? No, there's no access from the garage itself to the basement.
So the only way to get down to this basement is this set of stairs right here?
The basement access is right over there.
Right.
First floor down to the basement is right there.
Okay. So, I mean, it looks like an 8-bedroom, no, technically, I mean, 7 or 8, if we are going to call that other bedroom. So it's an 8-bedroom, almost 9 full bath, 1 powder room home.
It's a sizable home that's proposed on a lot that can support this home.
What about the parking for 9 bedrooms?
We have the loop driveway in front, which can support approximately 8 or 10 cars. RSIS would tell us that we have to have at least 4 parking spaces. We clearly satisfy that requirement.
Mr. McFarland, if I may. Just so it's clear, you represent the square footage of the house to be 3,700 square feet. Just so it's clear for the record, is that 3,700 square feet of just the first floor, or is that 3,700 square feet of first floor plus the basement? Could you just elaborate on that calculation and what's included?
Just give me 1 second just to confirm.
Sure.
I'm just looking at the architectural plan, which indicates that the overall footprint is 70 feet wide by 80 feet deep. And again, that's the overall length. The architect indicated the first floor area of 3715. The architectural plan does not give me the exact footage of the basement floor tabulated separately at this time. But it does indicate that the first floor area is 37. If I have to guess, I'm going to say the basement does not occupy the entire footprint of the first floor. It's a little bit smaller. It's probably around 2,600 plus or minus. I'm guessing at that number a bit.
Okay.
The 3715, that would not include the garage on the first floor because that's not living area, correct?
Correct.
All right, so it looks like the only thing that's not included, it looks like that's really the only difference between the first floor and the basement, the only real difference. So to me, the basement appears to be about 3,715 square feet as well. And I think if the board were going to put in square footage of living area in a resolution, then I think the safe bet would say 3,715 times 2, which is 7,430, 7,430 square feet. That would be safe. That would be safe for your client by stating that.
I would, of course, ask the architect to give us that number as part of resolution compliance, so there's no question as to what it is.
Just to clarify, the applicant wanted it to be known, the house is for them. The extra bedroom in the basement are for when their children or grandkids come to visit for a night or for a weekend. Only people living in this house will be Mr. and Mrs. Reese.
Thank you for that representation.
Through the chair, just a safety concern. Having that big a footprint in the basement, that many bedrooms, one point of egress, is that sufficient?
We're going to meet, it meets whatever code is required by Jackson Township.
I guess it obviously is a code question, but just it seems.
Well, just for your own, since we asked the question, just for your own information, Mr. Costanzo, the building code does anticipate this condition, and the building code does, of course, provide direction to the architect and the builders for that condition. You'll see on the floor plan that there are a series, on a basement plan, there are a series of window wells. Those window wells are provided to allow for egress. They have to have a certain area and size to meet that requirement, but I'm sure it's the architect's intent that those window wells will satisfy the egress criteria.
Mr. McFarland, I'd like to also have you go back and elaborate a little bit on your testimony regarding the front yard setback. You said minimum front yard is 80, you're requesting 60, and in support of the request for the 60, you were utilizing your observations on the other properties in the immediate vicinity. Do you know if when those houses were built, they needed variances for the locations, the setback, or is that a later imposed setback requirement on these pre-existing houses?
I don't know when every house was built, what zoning was in place. What I can tell you, what I can reference for you tonight, is that in looking at the filed map from when this lot was created in 1986, and just for reference, this is a filed map number G-1752. It's a proposed subdivision of block 70, lot 24 that created this lot. At that time, and I'm going to throw something out here. Maybe Mr. Peters is familiar with this since he's a little bit older than me. The zone was indicated as E1 at that time when this map was filed, and I did discuss the lot width previously, where 200 feet was required. A variance was granted to the 157.8 that exists on our subject lot. But to answer your question, at that time the front setback required was 60 feet. So my testimony showed that of these lots that are located on Green Valley Road, there was one that's 37, the ones I pointed out were 37, 68, 43, 42, 33, and 68. Again, I do not know when all those homes were constructed, what zoning was in place when they were constructed.
Given the design features of the house that you've depicted, maybe I just missed the explanation. But why is it so difficult, given the tree removal that you have to go through now anyway, the removal of the houses that you're going to take down anyway, in order to clear enough sufficient space to create this? Why is it so difficult not to maintain the minimum 80 feet?
Anthony, if you could put A1 back up, the plot plan.
Yeah.
And possibly can just zoom in a little bit in here for me? Can you see it when I point to the screen for you? No? Right over here, yeah. Zoom in just a little more. Right there's good, if you can zoom in.
Thank you.
It's a little hard to see here, Mr. Chairman, but
I have your diagram in front of me.
Okay.
So I'll look at both.
okay, so anyway, you can see that there's an existing tree line is here. So we tried to preserve as much of that existing tree line as we could. Again, the existing house is basically in this footprint. So we tried to put the new house in the same footprint, again, to try to minimize the disturbance and what's going on. And also that this site does have some topography You can see the existing contours, a little hard to see on this map, but the existing contours are directed to here. So there's a low spot in here. There's a higher grade over here. You know, the further we push the house back, the more earthwork, the more fill dirt we have to bring in to make it work. So it's our opinion that locating the house essentially within the footprint of the existing home, also trying to minimize the length of the driveway. The further we push back the home, the bigger the driveway gets, the more impervious surfaces we have. So it was our opinion when we evaluated this that setting the home at 60 feet was reasonable. It was consistent with the development pattern in the neighborhood, and for those other reasons, that's what we decided to present here to the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in addition, aside for the legal justification that Graham has provided, as I started the application this evening, I indicated Mrs. Reese has some physical disabilities that limit the amount of walking. The further we go back, the further she has to walk to the street. We understand that we have ample land to move it back a little bit. You heard some justification as to reasoning why we think this is the best location, and we would respectfully request that the board grant the 60-foot. However, we understand that there is probably some wiggle room if need be.
At least preliminarily, I suspect a stronger argument is that your client has certain physical issues, but as to the others, I'm still running those through my mind, especially when I look and I see what you have to do with a proposed tennis court. And I see that you have a significant tree line that's running through the tennis court as well. And so you have an argument that kind of contradicts a little bit.
Understood, and as we indicated, we have the room. If there was some wiggle room, again, we would like it as close as possible. If the board feels 60 feet is too close and we have to go 65 feet, it's something we could do. It's something we prefer not to, but it's at the board's discretion.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback the chairman's comments, we're talking about 20 feet here. That's the length of a parking space. I mean, in reality, that's what we're talking about, the length of a parking space. So, I mean, whether the dwelling is in its existing location and the in-ground pool is in that location, or if that's moved back 20 feet, the excavations for those are still generating the same amount of fill, and it can easily, the rest of the site can easily accommodate that. So I don't think there's a hardship from an engineering perspective. It's purely just it's just a request, and the board's going to have to determine if there's a unique standard that permits that request. Right. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Yes, Mr. Hill.
Mr. McFarland, just a couple of questions, if I may. You indicated that the justification for the variance is based on a C1 hardship, and that I understand. That runs to the width of that lot. It's an existing lot. But as far as your side yards and your front yard is concerned, I'm a little confused because my first reaction was, is this an over intensification of the lot itself? Couldn't the house be smaller? But now I'm hearing all the testimony relative to the number of bedrooms that you have in the basement. My concern with the basement is you indicated that there'll be window wells that'll be used for safety purposes, for exits for the occupancy of the bedrooms. How high are those window wells above the finished surface of the floor?
Well, that's regulated by building code. Whatever the building code requires, it will satisfy. That's not uncommon. Maybe it's something you're not familiar with, but that's not uncommon at all.
Well, I've seen a lot of window wells in basements. I could never get out of them. I'll tell you that right now. Now, it may comply. The question is how high above the bottom floor, the finished floor of the basement, how high above it are they? How high would someone have to climb?
If you know the exact answer.
Mr. Hill? Yeah.
In speaking with Jeff, we believe it's 44 inches off the bottom of the floor to the bottom of the, I'm sorry, from the floor to the bottom of the window. And the windows are actually oversized. They're not just your basic basement windows, but they're They're about triple or quadruple that size, so they can be opened and people can specifically get out. So they are dictated by code as an egress point.
But they're window, the testimony was they were window wells.
So what they are is you have, think of your basement that's underground, right? Except for the top 2 feet. You have a window that's 44 inches off the ground, and then you have the large window well that allows them to get out of that window and go up to grade.
Okay. With reference to A1, which was the aerial, it looked to me as if some of the houses in the area were smaller. Are there smaller houses, larger houses? Do you have any information as to the size of those homes?
Mr. Ho, I think that was A2, just.
Yes, you're referring to A2 was the aerial display. And yes, I did also do a tabulation. I did take a look at the size of the homes based upon tax map information. And I looked at all those same homes. And Anthony, maybe you can put A2 back up there. I did look at all those homes that were within that defined limit of study, I said, which were basically the closest 19 homes. And I found that the homes based upon tax map data actually range from the smallest of 810 feet to the largest of 4,000 feet. There were many homes that were
they single family?
all single family homes.
One level?
No, most of them are two-story homes. And by driving down the street several times, looking around the neighborhood, most of the homes in the area are two-story homes. They're not.
For example, just so I understand, just for example, the 4,000 square foot home, is that 4,000 square feet of 2 floors, 2 residential floors?
All I know is what the tax record indicated that house as. It's block 14001 lot 22, which is, I think it's that one. That house, based on tax records, is 4,000 square feet, a 5-bedroom home.
Graham, but in your observation, the proposed house, though, would you agree that it's deeper so that you don't see so much of the front, much larger front of the house than other of the lots have?
Correct, it is. We did show the rendering of the house that shows a very modest appearance from the street. So even though the house contains a lot of square footage, it is certainly not going to overpower the neighborhood. And my opinion is that it's consistent with the character of the neighborhood.
My other concern that I had, you were here when you heard the prior application for the addition of the home for a mother-daughter type operation. I get concerned when we have multiple types, I shouldn't say types, multiple utilization of a space. And I'd like to make sure and be careful that it doesn't become like a rental space, it obviously wouldn't be multifamily, but it could be like a rooming house. And I don't expect that to be the situation, obviously. But how do we address that issue here? For example, what was it, 5 bedrooms or 7 bedrooms total?
We were proposing
5 in the basement?
It was 2 on the first floor and 5 in the basement.
Okay. And multiple full bathrooms too, correct?
Correct, exactly.
Why is that? I don't understand why that's necessary here. That just puts a light in my mind that says, it almost sounds like a rooming house.
So for
what's different is that there may be one kitchen. I understand that, but how many grandchildren are we talking about here? And do they all come at the same time?
The reason they're here, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask. Hold on one second. 22 grandchildren.
Do they all come at the same time?
5 great-grandchildren. So I
Sorry, your wife has been very busy. Huh?
So again, I understand the concern of the board. So a few of the things, obviously, that we're showing here, it's a single-family house with no exterior entrance to the basement. The testimony, and we could also swear in the Reeses just to put it on the record if you would like. No one else is living with them full-time other than themselves. They will have at times children or grandchildren come to visit, for a night, for a weekend, for a few days. But it's definitely not a situation where this is coming into a rooming house. It's not permitted as a rooming house, and there are rules in place to protect that.
I appreciate that it's not permitted as a rooming house, and the current owners, you know, in 3-5 years from now, 7 years from now, they may decide to leave. Something may happen to them, leave it to their son. The son decides, hey, I got a lot of rooms here, I can rent them out. Yes, I understand you have to get a use variance, things of that nature. Would there be any objection, as we did in the previous application, to a deed restriction? So that the utilization is only for blood relatives of that nature. He's talking about grandchildren, so I don't see why he would have an objection.
My client seems to indicate that he has no problem with it. I'm just putting on the record that as far as this is not proposed as a mother-daughter, I know that that's standard to put deed restrictions in.
But the proposal is for a single-family home.
And that's all we're looking
And
for.
all we're doing is, all I'm asking for is put my mind at ease, as I did with the last application, that there be a deed restriction for the same type of situation. we
And just to
presented
clarify,
before.
the deed restriction would be that it's not going to be a rooming house?
No, it's a single family to be occupied, because there's so many bedrooms there, to be occupied by either blood relatives or by marriage.
One caveat, just only because of my client's medical condition, should it at a later date in her life need to have some
Well, that
assistance.
would obviously be an exception.
Once we put a deed restriction that we say it's just for family, that's why I'm clarifying. That's always my concern with doing a deed restriction. That everybody says it's a great idea, and with respect to my clients, they're screaming at that they're fine with it as well. But I have to think a little bit further down the line. God forbid something happens where they need some assistance in it. Someone comes up and says, "Hey, that doesn't comply with it." That's my concern. My
I
client,
would have no objection, for example, if they wanted to have maid service, you know, that or something that I don't, that's ancillary use that I think that can be applied. I'm talking about, you know, their son who inherits the house decides, hey, man, I got a great idea here, you know, and I'm gonna rent this out to my buddies because they want to go to the Super Bowl, which happens to be held in New Jersey here someday, we hope. That's my only concern. If there's no objection and your client has no objection, I have no problem with that.
my client has an objection. I'm just putting on some of these scenarios that I'm concerned about that could happen. And respectfully, really any house could be turned into a rooming house illegally. But again, my client indicated they're okay with
When
putting.
you have this many bedrooms and this many bathrooms, I understand that, you know.
With only
they've been
one
very
main
bu-
and
Very busy with grandchildren and children. I understand that.
with one main entrance to the house, no exterior entrance to the basement. It's a different, I agree. If I had come in, I had multiple entrances and I had an entrance from the rear of the
Mr.
house.
Pfeffer, I am fully
would
aware of that, believe me. I am fully aware of it. I
No.
know, for example, that if there's a rooming house does have one entrance, it has one kitchen, it has multiple rooms. That's all, that's my concern. I know it's not permitted. My only point here is that your application is seeking a single family residence. I would like to make sure, this is unusual. I don't know that we have enough parking spaces here for 5 bedrooms. I assume these kids are getting old enough to drive or whatever it may be. You know, you're going to end up with something that looks like, you know, a used car lot, you know, that type of situation. I don't know if we have enough parking. My only concern is, and I don't have a problem. It's their house. My only concern here is want to make sure it's a single family house, period, end of story. Your client agrees to that, so.
That's fine. I would just ask that the language have some leeway for any type of assistance at a later on life.
Well, I'm sure you and Mr. Gertner can work that out.
So, through the chairman, obviously, the applicant has agreed to that. Mr. Hurley has indicated that he would have no issue, and of course, the board could deliberate that folks related to personal services for the residents would be an ancillary exception. We can work on that language. I would also say, though this board hasn't done this in the past, but along with the deed restriction, just to also add to the clarification that Mr. Pfeffer wants, I am aware that Howe Township requires the resolutions themselves to be filed. In this case, since the resolution will have more information regarding Mr. Pfeffer's concern than the deed restriction. You could require the deed restriction as well as filing of the resolution, and that would cover, that certainly would
That's
cover
fine.
Mr. Pfeffer's concern.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Mr. Pfeffer, it would seem at this point, maybe this is a logical point to break. We're at 10:35. Unless there's something you need to quickly get on the record before we break and set for a new date. You
Yeah,
have to talk to
I was
Mr.
just, two things. One, if we can open to the public and see if there are any comments about this application, because really that's all of our, unless the board has any other questions, that's our testimony. I'm just going to throw out there also that I did provide buy-sell letters to the surrounding property owners. I believe the proofs have been provided to Mr. Gertner. If not, I can provide those. I have the green cards and the certifieds as well. As far as anything else, you want to just open to the public to see if there are any comments, and we're done.
I think there are additional questions from the board that want to be asked. I haven't gotten professionals involved in their questions, and there are additional questions to be asked on this. I would prefer that once you know that your testimony is completed, and it sounds like that you're telling me your testimony is completed. I know your client had her hand up. I don't know if she wants to testify or not. But my preference is not to open it to the public tonight. It's too late. I don't want to keep my volunteers here till 11:30. I don't know how many people are interested. And quite frankly, there are additional questions that are to be had on your application. So at this point, I'm disinclined to open it to the public. I'd like to bring you back and to complete the application at another date.
So, Mr. Chairman, obviously you deal with one at a time. In this application here, I only have the June 2nd hearing date in front of me, and I think at this point that's full.
So whatever the next available date is.
Yeah, I'd have to. Yeah. All right, Mr. Purpura, how does June 16 look?
I don't have June 16th agenda in front of me.
I can tell you that I'm here on June 16th. Grand Harmony.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you, Mr. Pfeffer. So I know because of the cancel, this may assist for this applicant, the board, and the other folks in the audience. Due to whatever circumstances there were, the board had to recently cancel a meeting. There is a routine on the first and third Wednesdays. June happens to have a third Wednesday available, June 30th. You've done that in the past just to fill in the gap, and that may be proper in this particular instance.
Yeah,
as long as you can get a quorum for
Yeah.
June 30th.
The board members are here. If you catch the gist, we're looking to have another meeting in June. June 30th would be the additional date. Do the board members here have any objection to that? Excuse me? So I've one away. Anybody? So
We're not gonna.
not going to have a quorum. Okay.
Or not enough. All right, so that idea is,
Can we, well, sorry. I'll say if we could listen on the June 16th date, if we get her, we get her. I mean, I know there's a process.
I think June 16th will work. I don't have an agenda in front of me, but Evan says that just the one application, Grand Harmony.
okay, so let's deal with one step at a time then. So as to this application, application number 7 on the agenda, the Reese application variance number 3357. This matter will be carried to the June 16, 2021 meeting without the requirement of further notice. Members of the public are directed to the municipal website and municipal locations for publication regarding access to public comment. The applicant has waived time through June 30th, and we will see you then.
And we have two other,
Yeah. And Mr. Alfieri, do you represent the two other applicants? Can you please approach? And again, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, if I'm
go ahead.
overstepping.
Move it along.
So let's deal first with let's just open it up directly. Do you feel, either Mr. Purpuro, Mr. Hill, Mr. Peters, that the June 16th meeting can hold both these other two applications as well?
The largest application that I'm aware of for June 16th is the Granite Harmony. That's not a use variance. You previously approved the use variance. This is for preliminary and final site plan only. So I think these others should be able to fit in. I don't know if there's any other large applications or not. I can't think of any. I think it's the,
So my recommendation, listening to that and having not started testimony on the preliminary and final of that, is that Grand Harmony, that these applications having been carried already.
Correct.
Be ahead of that.
Absolutely, yes, I agree with that.
So with that, Mr. Alfieri, I'm going to just jump ahead through the chairman and presume that, and I'll deal with them one at a time. The application number 8, Mayor Ezra Levy, variance number 3354. That matter will be carried to the June 16, 2021 meeting without the requirement of further notice. The public is directed to the municipal website and municipal locations for publication regarding access to the meeting. I understand as well, I perceive that the applicant will waive time through June 30th.
Yes, we will waive time.
Okay, and again, regarding application number 9, the Faculty 2 LLC, use variance 3355. That matter too will be carried to the June 16, 2021 meeting without the requirement of further notice. The public is directed to the municipal website and municipal locations for publication for access. The applicant will carry, the applicant has granted a time extension through June 30th.
Correct.
And for members of the public and the applicants who have sat here, I just want to make that, just so they're aware, folks are aware, that the board has agreed to maintain your place in line, so to speak, so that the larger application that's been talked about would end up being last.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alfieri.
See you then.
I believe that takes care of housekeeping. We are done. Motion to adjourn. All carried. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Good night.